It is 5:30, so I'll call the workshop to order, and I believe the first item of business on the workshop is the 2025 audit presentation. Director Iceland, are you gonna do this off?
I will kick us off here. We have Kevin Kimball, who is online as well. He is a partner with the Adams Group, and they are the ones that do our audit. So they are the ones who give the initial presentation typically, and they kind of go through and he'll walk through the various components of the audit and any findings that they had, and then open it up for questions, and then I can always help answer some questions as well. So Kevin, thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Would it work best? Do I have the ability to share my screen and then I can just run through the reports? Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
absolutely.
I think I sent a request, so if somebody wants to give me the thumbs up, and then I'll share the screen. Okay, there we go. All right. Did that come through for everyone?
Yes,
it did.
All
It's
right.
rather small.
I'll zoom in for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I'll get rid of some margins too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. And so similar to the past, gosh, 5, 6 fiscal years that, Eric and I have been working with the town of Lyons, because of the federal funds spent, we actually are issuing multiple reports, not just an opinion over the financial statements. So obviously there's the opinion over the financial statements, and then because of the amount of federal dollars spent, each year we have a report over the major program, as well as a report related to internal controls over financial reporting. And so the page that I have up here, whenever we issue an audit under governmental auditing standards, I like to draw attention to this page, and it's a part of the single audit reporting packet. And what it really does is it highlights all of the reports that we issued and a quick summary of all those reports. And then we can go through those if there are additional questions. But first and foremost, the audit opinion over the financial statements is up here at the first spot, and it is an unmodified opinion. So this is the cleanest form we as independent auditors can issue over a set of financial statements as an unmodified opinion. And then as a part of our audit over the financial statements, whenever a governmental entity incurs at least $1 million of federal funds, our report is issued under governmental auditing standards, which requires us to take a deeper look at the control structure that surrounds and helps govern cleanliness of reporting over the financial statements. And so as a part of that deeper dive into internal controls, if we have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies identified, they're just summarized here kind of in this flow chart. And so we did have one significant deficiency or finding that we'll go through later in the report, but for the report over the opinion over the financial statements themselves, clean opinion once again for the town of Lyons. The other opinion that we issue for 2025 is our opinion as it relates to compliance and control over the major federal program. And so the major federal program that had to be tested this year was the highway planning and construction, and that comes from CDOT, passed through the Colorado Department of Transportation from the federal government. And our opinion over the major program was that in all material respects, the town was in compliance with the compliance requirements of the program, and controls within that program helped mitigate any risk of non-compliance. And so there were no findings or significant deficiencies or material weaknesses as it relates to our work over that major federal program. And once again, this page just shows which program was highlighted, and it's a quick summary of those reports. Some of the key things, the differentiation between management's responsibilities and our responsibilities as independent auditors are listed in the body of the opinion for the financial statements. Sorry, got too many of these going. Here it is. So if anybody ever has questions about the different responsibilities, whether it's the town or our team during an audit, town management is responsible for the creation, implementation, and design of internal control structure that helps mitigate the risk of material misstatement for the financial statements, whether that's due to error, fraud, and our responsibilities as independent auditors include exercising professional skepticism throughout the audit, reviewing internal controls and key transaction cycles, assessing risks, and then designing tests, whether it's tests of details of transaction or tests of control to help mitigate the risk that we identify for the financial statements. The independent auditors report over the financial statements references the various types of information that's included within the financial statements of the town. Required supplementary information includes management's discussion and analysis, that year-over-year comparative narrative that's at the front of the financial statements, or the budget to actual schedules for the general fund or any other special revenue funds like the grant fund. And then supplementary information would be budget to actual schedules for the enterprise funds or non-major governmental funds. And then, as we discussed earlier in that quick summary page that I had highlighted, sorry about that, I forgot to zoom in. It does make reference to that other report under governmental auditing standards that, like I said, essentially is a more enhanced review of internal controls compared to an organization that does not incur at least $1 million of federal grant funds in a given year. And then I will just go through the report over the major program at a real high level. As we talked about earlier, it's an unmodified opinion for control and compliance over that major federal program. It talks about all of the items that we're required to do under 2 CFR 200 as independent auditors. There are guidelines for us as well as guidelines for non-federal recipients as it relates to those federal awards, and that's how we design our tests. And so, once again, clean opinion for the federal program, clean opinion for the financial statements. And the one finding that we had related to internal controls over financial reporting. And so essentially, during our testing, we had found in a couple instances where there were grant requests for reimbursements or grant billings for expenditures that had been incurred during 2025, but that request for reimbursement to the granting agency wasn't submitted until, I think, late March and April of 2026, and that activity wasn't captured as receivable and deferred inflows of resources. So an adjustment was recorded to increase receivables as well as those deferred inflows. And on the government-wide presentation that's full accrual, it was receivable and revenue. And so just that adjustment, and then going forward, some of the recommendations that were discussed with management was just around that fiscal year end, as grant requests for reimbursement are being submitted, just add an extra step to check when were these costs incurred by the town, or when did this contractor perform work for the town that the town paid for that then the town is requesting reimbursement for. And then the final communication that I'm going to, oh gosh, how do I get rid of this toolbar? Sorry about that. The final communication that I'll bring up, it is going to be our letter to governance. I'm going to stop sharing just so I can see everything on my screen. I do apologize, 1 second. During an audit, we are required not only to communicate our plan, which includes our scope and timing of the audit, as well as plan significant risks, but at the end of the audit, auditing standards require us to have a formal closing communication with the board. And I am going to pull up that governance communication. Oh, it was hiding behind everything. Here we go. So I will share my screen again and go through it at a real high level. What's included in this conclusion letter to governance would be key significant audit matters. And so if, for example, over the past few years, there have been accounting standards that were required to be adopted, and if they have a material impact on the financial statements, they're alluded to here in this letter. There were none that were required to be adopted for fiscal year 2025 that had a material impact on the financial statements, so it's not disclosed here. Other items that are highlighted in this letter are significant estimates. Inherently, financial statements include estimates, and the main ones or material estimates that impact the town's financial statements are listed, such as the accounts receivable, that outstanding balance related to the FEMA grant, capital assets and the relative useful lives applied to those assets and how depreciation is applied over the life of those assets, as well as those Leases required to be measured under GASB statement number 87, and inherently that's a right to use lease asset at a net present value. So that discount rate really is the basis of that estimate. Other items included in our conclusion letter would be if we had difficulties performing the audit, they would be disclosed here. Happy to report no such difficulties. Everyone that we worked with at the town, whether it's Carl or members of town management, always a pleasure to work with, quick to respond. We really do appreciate everyone's efforts during the audit process, and happy to report there were no difficulties on our side going through that. If we have any corrected or uncorrected misstatements, they are alluded to, and we did. Obviously, we just went through one as it relates to grant revenues and receivables. And so they're just called out here in this letter, and a listing of those has been provided to management. Outside of that, any disagreements with management, we did not have any during the audit process. And so those are the main items included in this letter. Key estimates, overall kind of results and process of the audit. Management was a pleasure to work with. We appreciate all their efforts, and no disagreements during that process. So I went through everything at a really high level. I'm happy to answer any more specific questions. I just wanted to be cognizant of everyone's time during the workshop.
Any questions from any board members? Anything that director or town administrator would like to add?
So as Kevin mentioned, he mentioned an individual, Carl, and some of you are familiar, but Carl Marshbanks is our outside consultant. He is a retired CPA. He assists every year end with the adjusting entries, the grant funds, things like that. And because I'm not a CPA, he's got extensive knowledge that, that I don't necessarily have. So he is such an asset to the town. He's been working with us since before 2028. So I feel like I would be lost without him.
Not 2020.
2018. Yeah, 2018.
Since we started getting.
Yeah, so he's been around for a while, and before he was working as a consultant, he was actually part of an audit team that would audit the town. So he has extensive knowledge. He's very familiar with our FEMA grants, which is huge. And in addition to Tracy, so he helps us out every year and does a lot of this work. I will say, as far as the finding goes, my response, and it's listed in here under the corrective action plan, is to help consolidate the various grant tracking records. So Tracy has her grant tracking records as managing the grants, submitting the request for reimbursements, the timing of when they come back, the eligible expenses. My plan is to create basically my own spreadsheet that's not as detailed as hers, but that can help me reconcile Carl's work papers. Carl does the grant work papers and the grant adjusting entries. So by me having my own spreadsheet created by myself that takes Tracy's information, I think it would be more helpful for me to take that and then review Carl's work papers as well. Sometimes when you're working off of somebody else's spreadsheets, it's really hard to track the ins and outs unless you created it yourself. So that is my plan to help with reporting year-end entries and making sure that they are reported properly as well. So that is something that I plan to work towards as well. As far as a lot of the numbers, I feel like with the Board of Trustees, typically we're more interested in the fund balances. So we will go over those later as it relates to the budget amendment that we're going to propose. So we can touch on those as well. If you're interested in just looking at the numbers that I usually look at are on page C3 for the general governmental and C6 for the enterprise funds.
Since we do have time allotted, should we do that now? Otherwise.
The numbers in the financial statements won't exactly match. Yeah, because there's different various things that go through, but I could show them definitely what
Kevin doesn't have to stay on
No.
for that if there's not more for him.
Got a couple of big questions.
Okay, great.
One is the flood reimbursement, FEMA reimbursement schedule. Are we on track to where we thought we would be? Has it slowed down because FEMA slowed down, or where?
Yeah.
And how do we stand with the state on that? Are they still condemned to zero interest advance, but?
They are content. We were stagnant for a little while, but this year we've seen, in 2026, I've seen significant reimbursements for that. As of the end of 2025, I believe we were about 4.5 million left. I'd have to double check what we've received this year and then in turn reimbursed, but it's been definitely over 1 million to date. So they are starting to pick up. We are starting to close out some of those grants and get an understanding of what might be eligible versus not eligible. I don't have any indication that we're going to be short in our funding that we've set aside for that. But we are finally starting to see some work. I believe it was 2024, we had no reimbursements at all. And they started picking up probably mid 2025. So and then definitely this year a significant amount. So
Another big picture question. One of the aspects of the financial statement, I think, is the debt service level for the town, and we're looking at potentially some big borrowings for a couple of big projects coming up. We have no debt service in our general fund whatsoever.
that is
Right?
that is
I
correct.
was gonna ask while the auditor was on, is that unusual for municipalities generally, and for municipalities of our size, that the general fund has no debt service in front of us?
If I heard the question correctly, you're asking there is no debt service in the general fund for the town. Is that
Right.
normal across industry norms? Was
Yeah.
that the question?
Yeah, that's the question. Are we in better shape than most on that, or? How normal is that? Normal, that's what most of the sales tax does. We would normally think if the town in years past was gonna borrow money, that would be the source of lender would look to, that it hasn't worked out that way for the term of market. So is that are we in an unusual situation on that?
No, not necessarily. It really dictates what the debt is for and how it's levied. So, if it's utilities, whether that's water, wastewater, electric, those types of debt agreements or financing agreements, a lot of it is leveraged with future tap fee collections as well as those utility billing collections. And so those debt agreements or financing obligations are just structured differently. If we have seen instances where other towns may not have items broken out separately for recreation and cultural, where all of that resides in the general fund and sales tax bonds are issued or sales tax loans are issued, and all of that then is recorded in the general fund. But depending on what kind of debt is issued, if it's revenue bonds generally related to utilities, that all falls within the enterprise funds. But if general government, such as cultural or parks and recreation or other debt is issued for that purpose, but there's only a general fund where it's all recorded, then you would see that activity recorded in the general fund. Especially one of the main things related to it is what are the pledged revenues to help satisfy those debt obligations? And for a town, and obviously sales tax is a big revenue driver, whether it's a portion of sales tax that's pledged, and depending on what impact or what sales tax is allocated amongst a general fund or a recreational and culture fund, that's kind of where you see that debt service payment, principal and interest coming out of. It's really just the fund structure of the town and then the type of debt or the purpose of the debt being issued that then dictates the type of pledged revenues, whether that's sales tax revenues or utility billing revenues that are pledged to pay back that debt. So it was a winded answer. It really relates to the structure of the government as well as the type of financing that the government's pursuing.
Thank you. We appreciate the clean opinion again. It's been routine in recent years, but it's nice that it's become routine. Because there have been times in the past where there were some things that had to be corrected and everything, so basically, clean report with no significant, in my view, findings is, it's good to see, appreciate the work and that your firm has done.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time to be able to bring our reports forward to the Board of Trustees. One clarifying question. I know that there's a regular board meeting that starts at 7. Is this the only one that you generally have us present at, or do we need to show up again for the next one? Which is
This is the only one that you.
Okay.
So you're free after that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I didn't leave you guys hanging if I was expected at the 7 p.m. session.
No, you're okay.
Okay, wonderful.
We have an item on our consent agenda to approve the audit report, so it's not anticipated there'll be further Q&A on that.
Okay,
Thank you for the presentation.
wonderful. I appreciate everyone's time.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Kevin.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Kevin.
I was just gonna ask, Cassie, do you have all the resources you need to track all the things that you need to track, like creating another spreadsheet? Or is there a software out there that would help you?
No, I think with the size that we are, spreadsheets are very manageable for me. I think that part of it just goes when you have somebody dealing with one aspect of the grant. Tracking reimbursements, revenues, expenditures, and then you have somebody else doing the accounting. And then you have somebody else doing, the reporting, it can be a lot. And so sometimes in my view, for my own self, it is just helpful for me to have my own spreadsheet that I created, that I understand, that I know the ins and outs of, that speak my language, because I'm not a CPA, right? So trying to back into what Carl is doing when he's doing his adjustments doesn't always click with me as quickly as if I were to just create my own spreadsheets in my own mechanism. But yeah, I do have all the resources I believe that I need. I mean, it's just a matter of, we're small, and so certain people wear certain hats, and we all try to work together, and
Right.
yeah. I appreciate the question.
Because we have the time allotted, is there anything else within the report that any of you feel like you would like a little more review on, or the management report that Cassie wrote? That's kind of more the plain English portion of this. Is there really, if there's something Cassie could put up those couple pages. We had a discussion today at our agenda setting that we might try to do our workshop agendas a little more generic. So if we get done with it, we're always trying to guess how much time a topic is gonna take. And we feel uncomfortable sometimes starting the next topic in case someone was coming for that. So we might start to do that a hair different.
Yeah.
Because the next conversation, maybe we can use that. But if there's anything else here, we can go through the management report.
Well, yeah, I think that might be just, it really is.
Yeah.
Me trying to speak, the language of the public, or,
Yeah.
but
Always appreciate
it is, yeah, well, and even for me, to be honest, because I'm not an accountant, so this is the report that I write and Victoria reviews, and it's trying to just highlight some of the higher level fund balance. Well, and it actually does not speak to fund balance. Fund balance is really more of a budget term. This speaks more towards net position, which takes into account assets and liabilities and things like that. I feel like budget terms are a lot easier for a person to understand. So please don't feel discouraged if you do not understand the terminology and the ins and outs of this, because it is very complex. And as is the budget, but the budget is less complex. So this is kind of gives some financial highlights on our net position and ending fund balances. When it speaks to governmental funds, that is everything except for our enterprise funds. So everything except for our utilities. So it's our grants, it's parks, it's general fund. So whenever you see something referred to as governmental funds, that's all it's referring to. And then it kind of just goes over what's included in the government-wide financials and how we do fund financial statements. When you see proprietary funds, that's also another way of saying our enterprise funds. So, when we see governmental funds and proprietary funds, that's what it is proprietary is referring to. One of the things that is very difficult currently with our financials is the flood activity and the FEMA activity and tracking because there were so many projects. So that is one reason why it is, in my view, very important to try and maintain having Carl as long as we can. Tracy is a huge asset. Without Tracy, I really don't know how the town would be able to do it, and reconcile, because even the state has, on their side, has had turnover. And I think that's why, part of the reason why it is taking so long, because to have somebody come in and jump into all of those projects has been, it sometimes to me seems like Tracy is teaching them.
She is.
And so it is very difficult. With the auditors, it's the same. We haven't gone, I will say, we haven't gone out for an RFP for our auditing services. However, they have decreased the fee as we've gotten less and less more difficult and more complex. We haven't gone out for an RFP because in my mind and in Carl's mind, if we were to bring in another auditor, the time it would take for them to just become familiar with all of it would likely eat up any savings, if there would be any savings. There is a financial listserv, so I am familiar with what other towns of similar size are paying. And so I do feel like we are still in a great position, and they have increased or decreased tens of thousands of dollars from our audit during the flood was probably almost close to 100,000.
It was the first year.
We're paying, I think, 30,000
Yeah.
now, so.
So as long as we still have a single audit with federal funds, we feel like we need to stay with this group. And then, because we should go out for a different auditor some people say 5 years, some say 10. So,
If not, they switch, you just managing partners, which is also good. And they do that to try and, alleviate any risk or any, overload.
yeah,
Yeah, so
so Kevin was good this year.
Kevin is great. Yeah, he's actually filling in for Eric, who is on vacation, but he was the main partner this year that we worked with, and we've worked with him for a couple of years,
So
but
we'll probably stick with these guys 1 or 2 more years.
until FEMA's gone,
So,
at least, and then.
and then we can go for another.
And they're welcome to bid, and
Oh,
if they
of course.
bid,
Yeah.
wonderful. But yeah, I'm really hopeful that Carl doesn't retire. He's retired, but
He did.
I'm hoping he doesn't retire from me because he's just so helpful.
Yeah.
He's the one who drafts the financial statements that you see here. He takes all the adjustments and the trial balance that we get from our system and creates the financial statements. So he is just.
I have to tell you, Carl has retired and then worked with Cassie a couple years. And he's like, I'm not gonna leave you guys out of this opportunity. I want to keep working with you guys.
Yeah,
He's great with us. Every year he said, I'm done.
Yeah.
So we gotta give him a couple more years.
Yes, he's a great asset for us. So this again just goes through the various types of funds. And then there's the analysis that goes in here where you can see it, well, probably can't see it. The governmental activities and then the business type activities. Again, business
Another
type
word.
is another word for the enterprise utility funds. So it breaks those up. And you can see where the unrestricted balance is here. That's in the governmental funds. That's kind of more your fund balance if you're looking at it from that aspect. Where I do like to look at true fund balance numbers is, and I mentioned before, it's at C3, if we were to go to C3 for the governmental. So you can see the major funds here. This is the governmental funds. And again, I'm sorry, this is so small for you all. So this breaks it down by the major fund types. And you can see down here where it talks about fund balance, this unassigned fund balance. For the general fund is what we look at for the new year. So the ending fund becomes the beginning fund of 2026. Our beginning fund balancing also includes this prepaid as well as subsequent year expenditures. So you add the 3 of those together and that's our ending fund balance. For the town flood share, so that's in the general fund, the 600,000, that's what we're setting aside or have set aside for the flood costs that may become ineligible or be clawback. There's also 300,000 sitting in the Parks and Recreation Fund. that is lumped in here, just because Parks and Recreation is already a restricted use. But it is taken out of that when we do fund balance, and it is noted in here as well. So these are kind of the numbers that I really look at when we're starting over at the new year. And so when you see in the upcoming budget amendment, we have changed the projected fund balances from what the original budget says to equal these new fund balances from what was actually realized at the end of 2025. In all cases, it was more, so it's good news. That means we have more to spend. And we'll get into that later as well, with the budget amendment. And then same thing for the enterprise funds, which you can see here, or proprietary funds. They call it, with these types of funds, is the unrestricted, whereas the other one was the unassigned. So this is the unrestricted fund balance. You can see our little stormwater fund, 279,000. So what I would like to point out is that these do not read. We also have a 3-month reserve, as you recall. That then comes out of this fund balance, and we essentially set it aside in our mind and we don't spend it. So when I give updated fund balances, I usually say, here's our fund balance, here's what our required reserve is, here's what's available to spend. So you'll see that again as we move forward in the budget amendment. I'm not really sure what else to point out. There's sections on debt that show the various debt service. We did just pay off, or will with this AP, we will pay off our electric debt. So the electric fund will be free of debt. So then our only remaining fund, or remaining debt at this time, is the wastewater treatment plant. That's from a few years ago. Talks a lot about assets, the types of assets. Yeah, I don't really know what else to specifically go over in this.
It's just with a new group, right? Who just
Yes.
has-
Yeah, and again, if you don't feel like you understand it, don't worry. The budget's probably more important to get the ins and outs of. This is very complex if you don't have that finance background, so.
Thank you.
Okay. So,
Yeah, like you said, our time estimates are just estimates, so I think we should proceed to the second part of the
Sure.
workshop.
Okay.
Stormwater funding possibilities.
so as you all know, we have some large stormwater projects that are on the horizon, as well as additional ones on the long term plans that need to happen. So
I can share.
you're gonna share your screen, yeah?
So
Cassie and Aaron, Tracy have put together some of the different stormwater projects and funding sources, so that during our meeting tonight, we can get some direction from the board on which of these you want us to continue to pursue, and trying to go through the alternatives, since it gets really complex.
it does.
It becomes kind of a flow chart of, if we get this, we need this, if we don't, we need this. And so we put it into a spreadsheet, since Cassie loves spreadsheets, and try to explain it this way for some of you who also love spreadsheets or are visual learners. So go ahead.
Okay, so we have a couple different scenarios for the, and this is for the 2nd and 3rd Avenue construction. So I should state that the design of the 3rd Avenue is being covered with the BRIC grant, and that's currently taking place. The design of 2nd Avenue is being done internally by our town engineer, Justin Doles. I believe the goal is to be 60% done with that
Next month.
Hopefully. So we have a better feel for what we're looking at. But so these are estimates or what has already been applied for. So this very first scenario is the BRIC grant. So another BRIC grant, we have recently applied for it. It is 4 million, just over 4 million. And the reason it's over 4 million is because it also includes 190,000 of grant administration costs. So Tracy's time would be covered. So the town wouldn't have to pay for Tracy's time if we were awarded this grant, which would be great because the town's paying for Tracy's time anyways. So this would be, you know, an offset to that. So we have applied for this grant. We applied for it this month, and we applied for the 3 million, a required match of 949,000. That is a big match, for the town for such a small enterprise fund, because as you saw, the stormwater enterprise with the 279,000 remaining. The good thing is that we should have a formal decision by January of 2027. And I say the good thing for that is because our loan application date is due January of 2027. So, if we don't get this, we will need to apply for a loan. There's a couple match options that we're also applying for, and one of those is the DOLA match. So it's called the LOMA, and we are applying for that for the full amount of the match. And so that application date is this month, and a formal decision date is actually, Tracy says it takes very little time. So the good thing is we will know if we get that match. And if we don't get that match, you know, we've got other options, but if we do get that match, it can only be used for this brick grant. So we couldn't use it to match the loan if, for example.
So we don't get the brick grant, we don't get the total.
Yes,
Oh, correct, yeah.
yes, correct. However, we are also applying for another grant, that could be used for a match, or Tracy thinks they'd actually let us use it as an offset for our loan as well. So that's great. So this is the Natural Disaster Mitigation Enterprise. We're applying for 900,000 just because that is our best, we were informed that is our best option. You have to have less of the vote to majority vote to have that. The application date is next month, and then we would know in December 2026. So those are two timing things that do work in our favor. If we were to get, you know, not get the LOMA and we were to get this other grant, then we would have, you know, 54,000 estimated to come up with. We could use capital sales tax for this. So that's small. That's not something that I'm worried about. If we were to get the brick grant and not get either grant match, then we could go towards the state revolving loan fund. So this is, this would be considered a direct loan. We would apply for the whole match for the brick grant. And I apologize, I missed putting the deadlines, but they're the same as down here. So it would be a January 2027 application date and a March 2027 decision. So, very best case scenario is we get that brick grant and we get a match. That is the absolute best scenario. Now, the other two scenarios is if we don't get the brick grant and we have to go get a loan, we have a couple of options here, and the state's loan program is split at 3 million and under is considered a direct loan. 3 million and over is considered a leverage loan. And when I say leverage loan, they're going out to the bond market and they're selling municipal bonds. It is based off of 85% of the rate is based off 85% of their AAA bond rating, and they pool them together with other municipalities. So originally, and in past years, the difference has been significant in the interest rate. However, I recently reached out to them and that difference has shrunk significantly. Of course, it can change with market conditions, but knowing that we're likely to potentially need 3.8 million, that does put us over the direct loan amount. And of course, we will know more once we get closer to that 60% design. So if we were to need the true 3.8 million or more and did not get the brick grant, we could either go for a leverage loan or we could go for a direct loan. A leverage loan, same time period, January application date, March decision. Estimated loan closing is May to July of 2027. Our loan repayment source for either of these would be the 5% sales tax. They will also require us likely to have a dual pledge. It will be the sales tax plus stormwater fees. Now, I don't anticipating us I think we will have enough sales tax revenue generation, but because that is a fluctuating and less certain thing, they want to have that dual pledge to say, okay, nope, you didn't get enough sales tax, now you need to increase your fees. So we could do that if we didn't get enough sales tax. Now, what I was told is the interest rates, based on, the recent market for 20 years is about 3.45% to 3.6. And 30 years is 3.7 to 3.85. This is still significantly lower than the market. Now, if we were to say, nope, and I should add that because the loan is tied to bonds, it's little prepayment flexibility. So if we wanted to prepay, we would have little flexibility in doing that. Same thing with a refinance, because they're tied to bonds. They usually would have to pool a refinance together and things like that. So we would have a little less flexibility. Do I imagine we would be prepaying? Probably not. But it's just something to keep in mind. Now, the direct loan, if we were to say, nope, we don't want to go to the bond market, we would be 3 million and we would have to cover the 8 million or the 800,000. So if, as a loan backfill, if we also didn't get that other natural mitigation enterprise grant, which she thinks we could use to offset this. So there's a possibility that we get that grant and then we just do a direct loan. So, which would be great as well. So the direct loan rate, same time period, we wouldn't be able to close till next spring sometime. But we would use the same sales tax pledge, and the interest rate's currently 3.25% for 20 years and 3.5 for 30 years. So I did do a calculation. If we were to do leverage versus direct, it would be over time probably about 400,000 to 500,000 difference over time that it would cost the town. But again, you're also putting forward 800,000 that could be used towards something else. So those are kind of our stormwater funding options. Now, if we decided we wanted to backfill it with just town funds, we would have to use the capital sales tax and the remaining general fund from 2025, which is something that I noted below. So these are our balance. This is on my estimated ending fund balance for the capital sales tax at the end of 2026. We should have about 660,000. The ending fund balance is estimated to be about 743,000. These ending fund balances assume that there are no additional budget appropriations in 2026. So if we left everything as is and didn't appropriate or find needs for anything, this is what the balance would be. And that would also assume that this is our #1 priority project to utilize those funds for, because utilizing the capital sales tax is one thing, because that is absolutely what it's designated for, but utilizing general fund dollars for an enterprise fund project, whether it be wastewater or, stormwater, you just want to make sure it's your #1 priority, and that's absolutely where the funds need to go. And there's nothing wrong with it. It happens all the time with smaller municipalities, but you just want to be cognizant of that. So right now we have a lot that is up in the air with funding what ifs, and our first step of knowing, are we going for a loan or not, is going to happen once we figure out the BRIC grant.
Could you go into a little detail about the requirement for the bond council?
Oh, sure. So if we do a loan, we have to have what's called a general fund and a general opinion, which would be Brandon, and a bond council opinion. You have to have it with either direct loan or a leverage loan. The bond council opinion is looking at our enterprise fund and saying, and it has to do with Tabor, saying that, yes, we are in compliance with Tabor. Because the minute you have 10% or more of your revenues in your fund, and as we know, stormwater has very few, it doesn't take much to get 10% of revenues coming from either state loans, state grants, state or property tax, general fund, any general fund it knocks you out of enterprise status, and in order to go out for debt, you have to go to the get voter approval. When you're an enterprise, you don't have to get voter approval to go out for debt because you're utilizing the fee structure, but if you are out of compliance with Tabor and no longer an enterprise, you do have to get voter approval for enterprise fund
That means
debt.
an election.
So that would mean an election. Small municipalities get out of enterprise status all the time. If we were to get a loan and start paying it with our sales tax, we're gonna be out of enterprise status for quite a while. Because we will be transferring sales tax in to cover enterprise funds debt. Not a big deal unless we have another big debt project in stormwater that we need to have done. And if we do, we just go out to the voters. So
We were knocked out of enterprise status after the flood, so we have been there before. But it is another step then in that process and requires voter approval to understand, why this is.
That the biggest repercussion of getting out of it.
yes, is the only one that I'm aware of, to be honest. And so when we were looking at the energy and mineral grant for the culvert, our biggest concern was, is it gonna be federal funding or is it gonna be state funding? Because it's both, because that grant can actually be both. As I'm told right now, it is a federal pass-through of federal mineral lease dollars. So we are very fortunate. Assuming that's the case, we will likely want a bond council to at least take an initial look at it. Because if we start that project and start spending that money, then if we turned out we needed a loan, we couldn't get the brick grant, we'd have to go to the voters. So, but it does all appear that it's gonna be federal funds, so that's good for us.
So if we go to the vote, if we have to go to the voters because we don't get the brick grants, the question has to be something like, shall the town of Lyons borrow
Yes,
$2.8 million at this percentage?
with the pledge that's already we're already incurring the revenue and they're already seeing the sales tax, no increase
With
to
no
sales.
increase.
Yes.
Where they.
The only way that I see that happening is if the bond council looks at our energy and mineral grant agreement for the culvert and says, no, this is. But DOLA needed us to appropriate the match, which we're going to do tonight, in order to send us the grant agreement. So, so the grant agreement is what's going to tell us that is federal or not, but verbally, we have been told it's coming from federal mineral dollars.
We have it in an email, but it's not a formal grant agreement
Yes.
yet.
Sure.
No,
So-
it's very complex.
There's a lot of what ifs here, but again, yeah, I think our biggest step is. Well, knowing if we get the brick grant, it'll be great knowing if we get either of these two matches, especially the natural disaster one, because if we can use that to offset the grant or the loan, that would be wonderful. That would be great.
That would free up basically the half-cent sales tax for use somewhere.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. If we got the brick grant, yes, if we had to do the loan, it wouldn't free it up. Because we would still have to do the loan repayments. It could free up some of it though. Assuming that the terms of the authority's loan agreement are set aside some of this in a debt repayment, debt service reserve or something, which they may want us to do. It's
You
hard
might
to say.
have to set aside the whole amount, correct? If you basically pay down the loan amount with the natural disaster, with an offset.
Mhm.
And reduce your debt service, so you
Yes.
might not need all the half-cent sales tax
Absolutely.
cash flow for that debt service.
Absolutely, yeah. That's very true. So the best scenario is that brick grant. Let's get that brick grant.
Yes, but
Yeah, so I think we almost, in my mind, when we're building the 2027 budget, which is coming up. We're not gonna know any of this yet. We're not gonna know at all when we build this. We're gonna have to adopt a budget, not knowing any of this yet. If this is truly the highest priority project, we need to keep that in mind and adopt a budget. Knowing that we could potentially have this cost coming up. And, you know, we could borrow the whole 3.8 million and that's fine. And that frees up our fund balance to be used for other things. We have to take these scenarios and probably take the worst of the scenarios and plan for that when we're budgeting, because we don't want to overexpend ourselves, meaning this great fund balance that we have right now. Just be cognizant of, you know, what we have left and our fund balance in our sales tax.
I think you're right about planning for the worst possible scenario. And the other end of that is, I think, my personal view is that it's almost foolish isn't the right word, naive, I'll use that word, to plan for a BRIC grant from the federal government now. I mean, you saw the guidance, it's in the town administrator. We saw the guidance that came out this week across the board for all federal grants. That basically we can pull it anytime we want to, if it doesn't fit within administration policy or something like that. So with that direction coming out from the federal government to, you know, seriously believe that you're gonna get a BRIC grant of this magnitude for a project like this in Boulder County, to me is, I think it is naive. If it happens, great. I have a big helping us grow and even here on the dais if I need to, but I just think that for budget planning purposes, we need to
Yes.
look at the other alternatives as being the more realistic alternatives.
I agree. And so I think we need to go in with that knowing, well, would we be willing to go for the 3.8? And if we are willing to go for the 3.8, then that frees up our general fund dollars. If we're not, if we want to go for the 3 million and then backfill with the 800,000, then that's a different story. We will need to save the general fund. We'll need to save the capital sales tax. So those are, that might actually be guidance I'm looking for this evening, as we have these discussions, because I'm going to have to start building a draft budget and knowing what we would like to plan for is probably going to be, easier for me and less changing. So do we want to plan for 3.8 million leverage loan? Do we want to plan for a $3 million loan and try and backfill the rest? Also not knowing what the design is going to come in at either. If we say we're going to go for 3.8, we can really go for 4 million, you know, and it comes in at 4 million, 4.2, we can still ask them for that. We can still go that route. If we're setting ourselves up for saying, nope, we're just going to go 300 or 3 million and we're going to backfill the 800,000 and it comes in that, oh, the estimate's going to be a lot more than that, then we kind of just set ourselves up for needing a leverage loan anyways.
And that's a question I was gonna ask is, how realistic is the $4 million estimate? And given that none of this is gonna happen until 2027. Nothing stays the same.
So we'll be getting the estimate of cost with that 60%. You know, right now, if you're gonna say 30%, well, how close are the engineers? You would think they could be up or down, and usually it's within, say, 30%.
Yeah, Tracy,
range.
This is probably more realistic.
Tracy is on the
You
money.
have to go to the one, hopefully 3.8. Figure out that.
Tracy is online and she's been working with, both the engineers on the estimates as well as these, grant applications. Tracy, are you able to join?
Yes,
I-
can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
You can. Could
yes.
you touch upon two things to expand knowledge here?
Mhm.
One being, why 190,000 for your time when we know you're not paid like that? And secondly, that the DOLA local match, knowing that we have actually 2 grants we want to apply for that. And the
Yes,
national disaster too. We have two grants there that they would accept.
right. So the first thing, I'll address the 190,000. That is not how much it's gonna cost me to manage the grant at all. or cost the town to pay for my time. They just allowed for a 5% of your total project cost. They allowed 5% for grant management. So I just went ahead and applied the full amount, but it won't be anything close to that 190,000. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that, but that's what they allow with this federal grant. So both the LOMA application, which stands for Local Match Assistance, and the Mitigation Enterprise grant. I already applied for the LOMA for WIDOLA, and they already came back and asked a couple questions that I need to work on this week. And then the enterprise one I'll apply for in August, and 900,000 is the max that we can request on that. So that's why that's 900,000.
We haven't gotten approval on that one yet, just, that was on your August 3rd agenda.
Right, that one's due at the end of August, so I'll be working on that next. But also the LOMA one, I will also be submitting another application we submitted an application with SS4A, which is Safe Streets for All, for sidewalks and ped safety improvements along Highway 7 and Highway 36. And that also has a similar match of around 900 and some thousand. And so I will be applying to DOLA for that match for that project as well. So, and I did check with DOLA, and they said it was fine for us to submit 2 applications for 2 separate projects. So they were okay with that. And then as far as the cost estimate, so Justin, our town engineer, he completed a 30% design for 2nd Avenue. So I took his engineer's estimate for 2nd Avenue, and then 3rd Avenue, it's still in process. I think they're going to have actually the 30% design done at the end of August, and they'll provide an engineer's estimate for that one next month. But we just based on 2nd Avenue and our stormwater master plan, I was able to come up, and working with our town engineer, we were able to come up with an estimate for 3rd Avenue and then combine those together for that 3.8 million. And one more thing, I just want to make sure everybody is aware that total cost includes your construction. You usually hire a construction management firm to do inspections and materials like testing of your concrete and stuff. And then they do daily oversight for the town. It also includes any engineering design changes. Sometimes you get out on the field and you start doing construction and you run into problems or scenarios with alignment or grading. And so you have an engineer that will make changes to the plans for you. So that's also engineering costs. And then any other and some contingency and some miscellaneous costs for legal and stuff like that. So your 3.8 is rolling up everything involved with construction.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susie.
You're welcome.
Couple of questions. The LOMA submittal for the Safe Streets for All. So the board has already approved that.
That one the previous board approved.
This board hasn't approved it.
I'd have to look again. One of the boards did it.
I mean, we were talking about priorities, about making sure this is our top priority, and to me, my personal opinion, the Safe Streets for All item is nowhere near the priority of either Second or Third Avenue or the wastewater treatment plant.
I think
I think it might be appropriate for this board to discuss that project and make sure that we're on the same page with the prior board on that, because I've always had reservations about that particular project.
Yeah. Tracy, do you remember offhand which board it was for the local match?
I thought that it was the prior board that approved both of these projects, moving forward with both of these applications for both projects.
I'll double check it.
Okay.
And there are also maybe guidelines of what's eligible through that program, so we'll need to, we can gear up something with, because I know you talked about another project today during agenda setting you'd like to consider for the natural disaster grant. So maybe we should bring forward, August 3rd, since it's kind of a lighter agenda. Maybe we could bring forward the 4 or 5 projects that are eligible for both of those and have you prioritize that, which is the scenario.
When you're submitting 2 large requests like that, one for the
Yep.
Second, Third Avenue and one for the, say, State Streets for All. Do you designate, does the town designate priorities to the state of, you know, we're submitting these two, this one's more important to us than the other one?
Well, sometimes during different cycles, they're looking for different types of projects. Sometimes like, they were looking for pedestrian projects. And so that's why they liked that one. Other times, like for natural disaster mitigation, they may be earmarking, you know, in their head, they're trying to, you know, nationwide, make sure it's not all wildfire or all floods or all hurricanes. They kind of spread it out. So Tracy, by getting to know some of the, you know, the people we're applying to and their grant assistance, we get guidance on what kind of projects they're looking for. So since we didn't, unless you feel it fits tonight's posting, we could gear it up for the 3rd and bring forward those specific 2 funding sources and revisit those.
Yeah, I think that warrants some attention, because I would be personally, very disappointed if the response was yes, to the straight State Streets for All, but no, Southern Third Avenue.
I feel like that too, because if you're gonna have to match grant money, and they pick something that's lower priority, this town's gonna go crazy. Because those priorities, they know we all said this were. You have an issue and Main Street sinks into the inferno of whatever is underneath there. We can't fix that.
Well, this one's
That's
already
likewise.
in motion. Like Tracy said, today they reached out with a bunch of questions on this one. Asking us, regarding the Loma. So they already have this one in front of them. Based on the other group, they have the other one in front of them too, but haven't started us.
We can always decline an award if we don't want to move forward with it. And DOLA is aware that we're asking for funding for 2 separate projects, and they may fund both of them and they may not. And also if we don't get the BRIC grant, then we'll turn down the match, and same with the SS4A. If we don't get that, we can turn down the match. So you can also decline.
If they were to approve both of those, how would we come up with, we'd be short on match funds, wouldn't we?
No,
No, if they come, 100% would be covered here between, if you got BRIC and the DOLA Loma.
Let's assume for discussion purposes, we don't get BRIC.
Well,
Then we
that's
don't
a
get
whole
Loma.
nother- then we
Loma
don't
is
take Loma.
nothing.
Then there's no match to match.
Right.
That's only if you get a match. I mean, if you get a grant, it's only for matching it.
All right.
So no, if there's no scenario 1 is its own section and scenario 2 is its own section.
But the mitigation grant could offset the loan.
That's what I was.
So that's, if I were to say the better
Yeah. Okay.
to choose if you had to. It has more flexibility. That's
Right.
better terminology.
right.
So yeah, there's so many scenarios here. But if this group wants to revisit a decision by a previous board. That was for pedestrian safety between here and Planet Bluegrass and okay.
I think it went all the way up to Eagle Canyon. So it's from about Main Street up to Eagle Canyon to have sidewalks on one side, and then also approving the crosswalks and the crossings along there too.
What these yours?
I think the concern is the perception, real or not, that applying to DOLA for this Loma for 2 separate projects could be competing, and we don't want to get crosswise with the former board. So just if there's any documentation that could ease the concern around
They've
the
already-
perceived kind
Yeah,
of
they
that.
told Tracy that, same with natural disaster. They said we have funds we want to expend, they don't wanna give it back.
Right, they don't, yeah,
And if no one, this is only for very small communities are eligible.
okay,
And oftentimes, very small communities don't apply because they don't have the grant knowledge or the staff knowledge we do from going through a federal disaster. So they're like, apply.
sure.
I don't think we're questioning
Thank you.
what our board did, I think we're questioning the future question, and if we have enough. If we have to match, we're gonna have to make hard decisions, so. That's
What we're saying is if you get that, there's no.
I guess the other thing following up on what Mayor Pro Tem Leonard said as well. I think if we ended up in a scenario where you're putting 10-foot concrete sidewalks, I think it's on this part of the street, I remember.
It goes down.
And out Eagle Canyon,
Right.
but you're not fixing Second and Third Avenue. I think the public blowback on that is gonna be severe. Because I'll just say, the big 10-foot concrete sidewalks from here out to Eagle Canyon and along the river and everything, it's a controversy. There are people, including me, who don't like it. Who thinks it's a waste of money. So you're potentially, what I don't want to see is a very controversial project interfere with one that basically everybody can, I think, recognizes needs to be addressed.
I think though what our responsibility is to educate that they're apples and oranges, they're not competing with each other at all. They're two different funding sources with two. If two different groups have two different priorities and wanna fund them, great, let them. But that's educating the public. You can't propose it like you are, that we're not doing this to do this. That's not it at all. This funding source.
What local funds do we have to spend if the
SS4A.
SS4 goes through?
With the Loma, 0. It's the same as the St. Grain Corridor Trail. It's a federal grant matched by state grants. Very little, if any, local funds to it. You know, you just have different groups that have different, one group wants stormwater projects, one wants pedestrian safety. They're two different groups. You
So
can't say they're competing. They're not.
So unless the grantor comes and says, well, you asked for 4 million, we'll give you 3 million, and Loma says we'll give you 900,000, so then we have a gap there. If they don't grant you the full amount, that would be the case of, then we would have a
Have to
decision of the town
Yeah.
to prioritize and potentially return back dollars because one
Yeah.
project prioritizes.
But if they're willing to do both. That's a little bit.
Because the main source is two different granting and
Yeah,
if it's
absolutely.
brick versus SS4A. Those are the first decisions that really.
One is all about safe streets, the other is about stormwater mitigation.
I think we're just going to discuss the safe streets, so, we'll talk about
I
that.
think we'll put that on August 3rd agenda. Let me ask something on the 3,000,008 total estimate for the Second, Third Avenue project. That assumes streets, sidewalks, and stormwater on both streets.
Yes.
Right, well, you say sidewalks, not sidewalks on both sides, a sidewalk on both streets, yes, it also. Part of the third, again, is coming off of that other. That's not safe streets, but the safe routes, I guess, that's a little. So some of the sidewalk and portions there are coming from that grant, the other is not yet, yeah. Sidewalks, curb and gutter, and some storm drain, right, we're not putting in a large. The 48-inch pipe all the way down, but in the certain areas where we need it. Area like at Third, where you have that underground section right by High Street, that's very concerning. How that's going on. So areas like that, we need storm pipe.
So right now, the 30% design is on Second is sidewalk on one side.
Yes, yes.
Other questions?
I just wanna make sure I'm understanding some things.
Sure.
So that SS4A is its own grant that has been
Safe
applied
routes
for,
system.
and then the brick grant is a different grant.
Yes, two different
Okay,
projects.
just making sure those are two different grant
Two different-
entities.
two different.
And then we've got the grant match applications to consider, but we've got.
The DOLA grant match, no, they've both been, we have submitted the application for the DOLA. Today, they asked us a few questions. And then the natural disaster is due next month.
And they asked questions about the SS4A grant.
No, they were asking questions about the, no, about the DOLA local match. And things like what would happen if you didn't get all of it? Would you still do the project?
For the stormwater project.
For the
What we're-
stormwater.
Yeah, I think where the wires are getting crossed is we've been talking about stormwater here and then suddenly,
SRT.
yeah, kind of came into the conversation as well, so,
Thank you for clarifying.
yes.
Yeah, it gets very complex and that's why we're very fortunate to have staff that have managed these things.
Yep, a question about the estimated 2026 ending balance for the general fund. $743,740 for your spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I think I saw a reference somewhere about unfunded capital projects contributing to that. So is that, did I read that right?
No.
Some carryover projects.
Well, it takes away from that, so when
Right.
this is what it is, even including the rollovers that we have proposed tonight. So this is assuming that we approve all the rollovers, and rollovers meaning capital projects from 2025 that didn't get finished. They were fully budgeted for, so it's not costing the town any more dollars. It's just rolling that expenditure and the project. But because we didn't spend it in 2025, that fund balance carries forward and then funds it. So it is a wash. This does already take those into consideration. Yes, everything that is included in the budget amendment tonight. This 743 takes that into consideration.
That's up considerably from the end of last year. Was that due to
Yeah,
unfunded positions or what?
no, when we built the 2026 budget, we actually left over 300,000 on the table. So it's actually half that rolled forward, and it's higher revenues than budgeted and lower operating expenses than budgeted. Sometimes that can be personnel savings, sometimes it's professional service savings. If we estimate so much for legal fees and we don't use all the legal fees, or things like that, maybe training we didn't go to, software we didn't use, or things like that. But, and even sometimes when we have a vacant position, for example, we will budget full benefits for a family, assuming you're gonna, and then if somebody comes in, we hire them, they're a single, that's significant savings right there, like for $25,000 probably per position, so. Yeah, a lot of times it can be personal savings.
I had one follow-up for trustee Lowell's question, Tracy. What percent of markup is in this BRIC grant for potential for increased inflation and costs by the time this project is done?
We just did a 10% contingency. I'm sorry, we did a 5% contingency on this one. So we do have a contingency. Everything's been estimated too based on our projects we just finished up. So we just finished that trail project, that CDOT project, that's a mile long. And then the Broadway project was another one of our most recent projects. So you kind of take, your costs from your most recent projects and kind of you build off of that. And the same with like your construction management, it always ends up being like a percentage of your total construction cost. So that's a percentage. And then, you pad it just a little bit, but on top of all of it, then we added a 5% contingency as well. And I do have to say, we've done very, very well over the last 10 years, 11 years of coming in under budget or on budget. So we do tend to pad them a little bit for that purpose so that we don't have to look for money at the end.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anybody, Eric, any other staff want to chime in on anything we've done? No? Lynn? Good. And, yeah.
Maybe a quick update, since Aaron mentioned it in connection with it, but the safe, the school sidewalk project.
Safe routes to school.
Yeah, that stands where right now?
That's,
It's underway.
So the design is with the same company was hired to do the
Right.
design for the Third Avenue Break Grant project and the Third and Stickney Safe Routes to School project. Basically looking at it as somewhat of one project, but again, because of the two grants, then separated out to the two projects for their portions. But that's being incorporated into part of the entire project.
So they're basically at the steam design phase.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have 30% design complete next month for Safe Routes to School and the brick Third Avenue. And just, I want to mention the Safe Routes to School also includes the construction of that portion of the design. So that's fully funded through CDOT and Department of Transport, FHWA, Federal Highway Association. So that will be designed and constructed with the Safe Routes to School. And then there will be a portion of Third Avenue, basically kind of more the east side of the street, that will fall under additional funding that we need for construction to do the east side of Third Avenue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
so what we'll be asking tonight during general business is of these options or others you want to consider. Which direction do you want us to, continue working toward? So that, we can build on our budget for that, because we'll be, now that, 2025, if it gets approved tonight and closed out, we have our starting balance for the budget, and we'll be starting that here in the next 6 weeks. Well, you'll start.
I've already started. I've already
But the board will start. So, so that's what we need tonight from you under that item, is how you want us to, which of these things you want us to continue to work toward for the stormwater piece anyway, and we'll gear up August 3rd for the, Safe Streets for All, and the other projects, next time.
What additional costs are there for us to continue with the brick application?
The brick application is in,
It seems so.
yeah, it's in.
That's obviously something we all love to see happen, but my question is,
It was
out of pocket cost or staff time to continue down that road?
it's Tracy's time, Cassie's time, my time, whatever Aaron or Justin need to, but, it's all absorbed in our. And Tracy got that submitted about 10 days ago. So it's in.
Sure.
We all need to take heed of this quote. Feel it. Feel some tension. I use this one a lot at home. Stephen King's one of my heroes. He wants his house. And he says, there's no harm in hoping for the best as long as you're prepared for the worst.
Yeah.
And otherwise framed as, you say, expect the worst and always be pleasantly surprised, or expect the worst, but we're gonna need, we won't eat crows because we love crows, right? We'll make something. I'm gonna burn my brick grant candles,
Okay.
whatever it takes. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
make your phone calls.
I'll make my phone calls.
All right, is that good?
Yes.
Hey.
You, until 7 o'clock.
Thank you.
Great.
order. I would ask that the clerk please call the roll.
Yes, Mayor Browning,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Wingert,
Present.
Trustee Jacobs, Trustee Schwartz. Present. Trustee Lowell,
Present.
Trustee Williams. And Trustee McCreary. Present.
You can all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I invite everyone to take a moment, to silently reflect on whatever gratitude, best wishes, remembrances, or other thoughts you choose about the Native American heritage of this land, our community, or anything of deep importance to you. Okay, I will need a motion for approval of the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
The changes anyone wishes to make to the agenda? If not, then I will call for the vote.
That motion passes unanimously.
We will now have audience business. It looks like the audience is relatively thin tonight, so it can be 4 minutes per person. I would ask that if anybody speaking, identify yourself and the street on which you live. You don't have to do the street number, and please confine your statements to things related to town business.
Okay, first we have Kay Sparks, followed by Crystal DeCosta.
Hey, Sparks, Apple Valley. I am here because, I'm going to talk back here because, well.
We can hear you.
Here's our, let's try that.
How about, is that better?
Or just push it straight up. Or to the side or something. Try that.
Okay, how's that, Lisa? Can you still hear me? Okay, I'm here as the chair of the Housing and Human Services Commission. I believe we have an active applicant for our final, open position. And I have worked with this individual, professional. This person's going to be adding a lot of skills and perspectives to the Housing Commission. And as usual, I'm gonna read the application here, I just got back. And I will meet with the applicant. I try to do that for a couple reasons. One, to let them know what we actually do and then what we don't do, since we're advisory. Hear what they are bringing and then what their expectations are, just so that once they accept, it's success for all. So, thank you much.
Next, Crystal DeCosta, followed by Gil Sparks. Yeah.
Okay, be short, sweet, I promise. Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. I'm Krista DeCosta on whatever, Fifth Avenue. Summer's in full swing for the Lions Creative District, and I wanted to share a quick snapshot of what's happening. This week alone is a wonderful example of what Colorado Creative District, Lions Colorado Creative District can look like in action. Tomorrow evening, LCD is hosting a 7 to 9 event at Main Stage featuring Casey Dreesen Fiddle Mastery, a Rocky Grass Week kickoff party, and a chance to gather around music and community. Then on Wednesday, there's a trifecta of arts happenings from 4:30 to 6. We'll celebrate the opening of Imagination Connected Tissue, our newest library art show featuring Kathy Rivers and Patricia Apfeller alongside Town Host Linus's open art show. Enjoy music by Joe Kukla, a community potluck of dips and salsas, and we're bringing the dippers, and artwork throughout both venues before heading next door for salsa music at Sandstone Park, 6:30. Mark your calendars for September 16th. 5 to 8, when the Living Arts Garden Party comes to the Lions Farmette. A magical evening of art, music by Annie Tiller, garden fresh food, dahlias, and community. And it's a collaboration between the Lions Creative District and the Garden Club. Behind the scenes, we're prepping to announce our new 7-member executive board and broader advisory circle. I'm incredibly encouraged by the talent, experience, and community-minded leadership stepping forward as we evolve as an arts umbrella and connector for the arts, culture, and creative economy in Lions. We're also continuing conversations around the Lions Arts Exchange, the working name for the Visitor Center transformation. A community placemaking follow-up event is planned for early August. We're beginning some exciting brainstorming, including meeting with an architect to imagine what this community asset might evolve into in the future. I'd like to publicly thank CMAX for its recent $10,000 contribution to the Lions Creative District, along with support from Colorado Creative Industries, the Town of Lions, Planet Bluegrass, the LCF, Western Stars, and others. We're building a strong foundation for the work ahead. Finally, after attending the Colorado Creative Industries Summit in Trinidad last month and hearing how like-sized communities benefited from DOLA facilitated visioning and strategic planning sessions, I'm convinced that the time is right for Lions to intentionally circle together our many civic organizations, nonprofits, business artists, and volunteers to explore what's possible when we work in tandem together with a big picture vision for our town. The Lions Creative District is energized, grateful, and having an awful lot of fun imagining the future and what's possible. There's a lot of work ahead and even more opportunities to grow a sustainable homegrown economy right here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last, Mr. Sparks.
Good evening, board, and everybody else. I want to provide several town crier type announcements and some gratitudes. This week, the Sundance Group will be hosting a session in Beaumont on Thursday from 2 to 4 p.m. A couple of members of your Sundance task force, including myself, will be there. If anybody else wants to join us, let me know, and I will facilitate the invitation. It mainly be with realtors to educate them what's going on in the Sundance community. And there are multiple municipalities being represented. With that, I mentioned last time, Sundance Fox Property Management will be coming here to Lions. That will be on September 23rd in the library. We'll be opening it up at 5:30. Actually start the program probably around 6. Go for probably 45 minutes to an hour, and then add Q&A and networking. And our property management is offered without being asked to help with the market. Going to be putting it out in Eventbrite notice about it, and watch for that if you want to participate. Moving away from Sundance, Fruit Nanny, August 29th in Bone Park, 3 to 7. The major thing I wanted to announce tonight is the Lions Community Foundation Grants Program will open on August 1st. It will close on September 5th. The town has additionally been a grant, has applied for grants. Just want to make sure you're aware of the timeline and take advantage of it. This year we have a little over $100,000 plus to give out. This is our largest grant pool since I've been in town. General fund will fund about 68,000 of that. The town's mental health fund contributes about 31,000 to that. And then we had good fortune to have an anonymous donor come forward this year and donate $30,000 to our general fund. So we've had a very positive year. The grants
will be in a range of $500 to $7,000. So if you know other nonprofits or initial entities that want to apply, please encourage them to do so. Then finally, shout out to the Sandstone concerts. I know several of you have been able to make them. I would estimate we are having record crowds this year. We are having enthused audience, dancing, and participating. It's been a great year for the Sandstone concerts. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Any further audience business? Board members. Thank you all for the interest in that.
Y'all should not miss Casey Dreesen. He is absolutely fabulous. Tuesday night, world class. Wow.
Okay, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. It's-
For Crystal, just clarifying, is that on Wednesday, are you just hosting an event or is there like a community workshop topic or anything going along with that?
Do you mean Tuesday at the main stage or?
Yeah.
Tuesdays, we're just, Tuesday's main stage tomorrow. And then Wednesday is the trifecta.
Okay,
Archways.
thanks.
So then we'll move on to staff reports. That was not Stacy Dreesen playing. You know, we're recognizing.
That's our new.
Staff report is.
Or something, yeah.
We're all checking our phones.
Glad to see that Sergeant McKim is with us tonight, so call her the sheriff's officer report. There were quite a few sirens in the last couple of days.
I know we had an accident up with the South St. Brain, that would be one of them, pretty bad, bike crash up there. Other than that, I'm not familiar with anything that was too serious. But I do have a few things, so last week I attended our first meeting of, sounds like several, we've got a committee. It's me, some older emergency services folks, Lions Fire Department, Rangers, our emergency services unit. And it's all related to swift water rescue planning and coming up with strategic planning and having, not just in lieu of the incident that happened with the child, but we know it's not at this point it's gonna happen. So coming up with a plan on who goes where, make sure roles are clearly identified and everyone knows what their role is and how we can hit these best. We need to be good at them, so we're gonna continue meeting, with more plans on that, so that's a good thing. Rocky Grass, as we all know, is here, and we have all of our ops plans are done, all of our staffing spots are filled. I will be here Thursday helping with the move-in at the farm and at the, Planet Bluegrass itself, and then Friday I'll be here at Open the festival all day, and then I'll be closing Sunday, but I'm here the whole weekend in case anything comes up, but they don't expect it will. And it's pretty status quo, at least from our perspective on the start. And then lastly, National Night Out is scheduled for Tuesday, August 4th. That'll be at Bond Park like it always is. It's gonna be us and the fire departments and specialty vehicles. We'll grill some food and hopefully get some music, and it'll kind of be the same thing it's been in years past, so that's kind of fun. It's kind of all I have at the moment, just busy working on these festivals and all the summer activities.
Yeah, I've always been very complimentary of the job that Fulton County Sheriff's Office does. I think that's hopefully a good mix of judgment of what needs attention and what you can never let go. And they always seem to hit it. The proper happy medium.
Thank you.
Any questions for Sergeant?
Hi, Sergeant.
Hello.
So, well, the most disturbing thing for me recently was I came back from a Dr. Cog meeting on Wednesday night, and right after I got home, someone hit a mountain lion. So that, it's been a pretty big thing for a lot of us who are huge animal lovers in town. So I'd like to just recognize the people that responded and thank them.
Is that the one that happened at Foothills and Butte Highway? I think.
Right,
Okay,
it's outside of
church. Okay, yes, I think that's the one I did.
Yeah. Awful night, but good that people were there and handled it.
Well, thank you, and I guess on that, do you want me to turn this back on? On that note, I know we have a couple of bears in town that have been kind of all the talk on the Facebook, and we're working with CPW, we're trying to get them relocated, well, they are trying to get them relocated, it's not our forte, obviously. But they're aware of these two, and we're trying to prevent anything from having a problem with them.
I understand at least one of them may have a tag. CPW has made it clear to us that they do not want to euthanize a bear if it has a tag. That's not an automatic death sentence. They have told us that. So their plan is to try and trap and relocate. So I believe they were supposed to set up traps last Friday. I don't know if that happened or not, but just for your knowledge, we are aware of the problem. We want the bears to stay alive and to go somewhere else. So we're trying to work with those guys and get that resolved.
I appreciate that. It took 15 minutes to reset my compost bin and pull it out of the heavy rocks and pull up the needles and.
There's resistance.
Anyway,
Just put a trash can in the trap.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a great idea.
Okay, the administrator, thank you, Sergeant.
Well, as you guys all are aware, we are remain in stage 2 fire restrictions. So we will continue to monitor that and hope that rain really does come to fruition this week because it's looking pretty dry out there. There has been some discussion in regard to that, and I think the Parks and Rec Commission is going to add it to one of their agendas. There's a trend of converting charcoal grills to propane access. So in the park, so that during these high state fire stages, there's the ability to switch off something instead of charcoal, which stays hot oftentimes even overnight. So I think they're gonna take a look at that, see if there's maybe any grant funding to retrofit or consider that, and then folks would just bring their tank with them instead of their charcoal. So something to think about. We're getting lots of questions for people who have paid for camping, paid for shelter reservations, and then get here and they have no way to come. So something I think we're gonna at least consider and talk about and see if we can figure out something for next season, probably. I did have a request in my report about needing an alternate appointee to the Colorado Municipal League's Policy Committee. Currently Mayor Browning is our representative from last year, and they have indicated, and he has confirmed that he remained the direct appointee to that. But we are needing an alternate to that, and so I did attach what the role of that group is and their frequency of meeting. So you guys could talk about that tonight. I also included a little more detail on something called our hazard mitigation plan update. Every either community or region is required to have an updated hazard mitigation plan if you want to be eligible for federal funding following a disaster. So this is really critical, I think, in our case with our high probabilities for fire and flood, especially wind, hail, to keep this up to date. And so we have Boulder County and all the municipalities within it that participate as one party. And it is time to update that plan. It's due to FEMA by 2027. So I just wanted to make you all aware that currently Director Kaplan and I serve on that planning committee. And we will be really focusing on this in August to update what they call, each community has an appendix to this plan. So we have an appendix that we need to update. And we're gonna try to have a table out at the last concert. There's also a survey link out there. If any of you would please take that, that'd be great. And we need to have this plan pretty well wrapped up by the end of October for them to bring all of it together and submit to FEMA first of the year. So I just want to make you aware of that. That's another one of those things we don't necessarily talk a lot about. It's not assigned to just one person like some communities have, mitigation specialists. The mayor earlier referred to the proposed federal rule regarding changes to federal grants that could have a significant impact. Unfortunately, we heard about it after the deadline had passed. And so we weren't able to write in these in the letters they were recommending, but we do have CML and the National League of Cities as a member of that. both representing us to fight some of these changes. Since we are a community that is very, reliant on and successful with grants. Other than that, there's a, updates on more art and history in my report. I did have one, National Disaster Mitigation Enterprise Grant application. We were seeking a request to submit, but now I'm wondering if you want to wait till August 3rd. So we can have a broader discussion on this. This is a grant that is in regard to wildfire mitigation efforts. And it has been one of the priorities to try to continue to underground our electric transmission lines. They have a max of $900,000 request. This would underground from Black Bear pull up to 3666 Junction. And then the other one we were wanting to submit was the 2nd and 3rd Avenue stormwater. So if you are more comfortable, I can hold this until after our August 3rd discussion.
I don't think that would affect the underground, because that's an additional submission, wouldn't affect that, right?
But you said you had some wildfire
No,
mitigation projects you were
That was-
just
you're
consider.
gonna do that tonight as opposed to amendment to the roll.
But you want
It's a fairly small, I don't believe it's, I don't think it would affect this at all.
Okay, so I would seek the ability to submit those, does not accept them by any means, does not award them, just submit the application. And then there is another grant coming up that is new to us. We have never applied for this. It's called the Community Wildfire Defense Grant. It is through the US Forest Service, not Colorado. And those grants are gonna open in August. And this would be for that same stretch, since that was a previous priority for the board. I don't know if it still is, that stretch among to under.
So Victoria,
Yeah.
on those grants with the wildfire stuff, especially now with all of these changes, are we limited to just one application, or can we do it like the other ones?
Different grants have different guidelines. So the only time Tracy ever asks for more than one is if they openly allow them and they're not competing against each other. And so that's what this National Disaster Mitigation Enterprise Grant is. This is we have never applied for this grant either. Both of these were the new grants, we have never. And oftentimes in those situations, they're looking for small communities because they usually are going to look. And they have to put so much to small communities under 10,000. So these two are not competing with each other. They were two separate, they said you can ask for the full amount for both.
I think the undergrounding one, it is part of, fire risk mitigation, the way I look at it, and, it's been, underground has been something we've been trying to do for several years, and just trying to difficult hurdles doing it within town because of the issue of businesses and homes being unwilling or unable to pay the service line connection. So until we figure out that problem, which the town attorney knows is a problem everywhere. To me, this seems like the most practical thing we can do in that regard. And if we've been budgeting $100,000 a year for in-town underground, and we aren't able to figure that out, that is something else we could use for this if this were awarded the local match money or additional local funding.
The other thing about this stretch is that the stretch of line that runs from the Welcome to Lions sign to the junction is a heavily wooded area. That if it ever did have an arc on that line, would prevent one escape route for.
What's the bank stabilization?
Oh, that was Tracy always has a list of projects that are eligible for different funding sources. And this is one that if nothing moves forward with housing, this grant also allows for, specifically states bank stabilization against flood prone areas. And
There's no specific part.
no, this was if you guys wanted to, or we could in the future, that project is eligible for funding at that full amount of that, the original 600,000. But it is, we don't find those very often, that bank stabilization is eligible.
Well, I only asked because you remember when was in CMC, we applied to them to you do that banking, and said, because it doesn't involve the river anymore,
Hmm.
they weren't gonna do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, you remember.
that, but I remember we have our match requirement as well, that 27,000 to the left, same bring left hand.
You see the answer on that yet?
Yeah, that isn't due though till the end, we have until 2020, I think, end of 27
Yeah, that.
to get it done. So,
Get better.
yeah, so either we come up with a bank project or we do a development project in which they pay for it, right?
Oh, that's what we tried.
Yep. So this is one more grant that would consider covering that, which is pretty rare. We really, Tracy says I rarely see banks. grants.
Yeah, we go back to the point, that's why we did the design,
Yeah,
and then we applied to CMC, right? Is that the Colorado,
CWCB.
yes,
CWCB.
yeah, and they said, no, it's because it doesn't involve the river. The river is going east, it's no longer on the bank. So I don't know if that would be the same criteria that we could be applied to.
Oh, this would be someone totally new. I think we would just say that we have an area that is still eroding if you want to. So I mean, this is something we could consider for this. So we have a plan, backup plan by the end of 27, I guess.
So the bank stabilization would be something you bring back on a specific.
Yeah,
Before we submit something.
Tracy said they said we could submit as many as we wanted. These are 3 separate categories under their grant. Bank stabilization, stormwater, and fire mitigation. So we can, if you want her to work on that right now, or we could wait and see if it's eligible, if there's funding later.
I would consider that a lower priority as well, just because. The limited area concerns.
And this group really probably would need to educate them a little more on that. But she wanted you to be aware that this group will accept applications for this.
Is there anybody who would be willing to be a backup on the policy committee for CML? It's pretty like, they mostly meet monthly during right before and during the legislative session. As far as I know, I'll be in attendance at all, but I think just need somebody's name to plug in. Yeah, so tell me that you.
All right, we'll let it be responsible. Listen, we will report back to them. Thank you. And applications?
Yeah, is there anybody that, I think there was consensus to go ahead and apply for the.
And the welfare.
And the bus. Yeah,
Yes.
great. Thank you.
Over my non-family family, the light you're like, so bad, we got 3 kids.
Is there a legal update tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. So I just got back from, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I just got back from Dominican Republic about 45 minutes ago now, so I'm still catching up on things. I do want to address the rulemaking on the grant stuff. So IMLA and that's International Municipal Lawyers Association and NLC I believe are planning on filing lawsuits over that. It's pretty clear they did not follow the Administrative Procedure Act and promulgating these new rules, and so I think there's numerous parties, including NLC, that is looking to challenge the promulgation of these. I mean there's a numerous problems with what they're doing. This from a purely legal perspective, and so I don't. Although it's unfortunate we didn't have a chance to comment. I don't think it's going to hurt us any in the long runs. I do think these are going to be challenged and stuck in the courts for a long time. This is kind of an update on that. I know a couple other organizations we participate in, the Public Power Association, NATOA, which is the telecom kind of public entity association, are also very much on top of this as well. So I think there's plenty of parties there that are pointing out the issues with what they're proposing. And so I wouldn't worry too much about the fact we didn't get in time, because there's numerous parties engaged in this. Other than that, I will say that we are starting getting legislation drafts in now for next legislative session. So there'll probably be updates on that fairly soon. And the last thing was just to kind of follow up on something that we talked about during the administrator's report and undergrounding. There is a PUC case right now about Excel Energy looking at doing an on-bill type of charge for this potentially. And so that'll be worth following and seeing how that works, as maybe an option for people that would be interested in socializing the cost of undergrounding programs. If it's hard to get people to pay them directly. And so it's something to keep an eye on. So we'll keep you updated as that progresses. Other than that, I don't think I have anything. Any questions for me?
Questions from the town attorney? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We have no ordinances for public hearings for tonight. Oh, sorry.
Do you want to do the sales tax update?
Oh, okay, yes. Yes, let's do that.
Do you want me to share my screen? Sure. For the public, for that helps too. There's some interesting data in there, you guys know.
Yes, there is.
So this report is only sales tax. I don't have June financials complete yet, but should have those at the next meeting, and I probably will just include the June data without sales tax because we won't have to do sales tax data yet. But this is through May sales that we received the revenue in July. And I know it's small. You can see that we are up from 2026. Which is great. We're up about 3.6% from 2025 sales last year. Year to date, we're up 7.4% or 58,000 approximately. And interestingly enough, there was a Q1 sales tax email listserv going around with various finance directors. And everybody that replied was up from last year, which is great. I didn't expect to see any of that, and maybe some of the ones that were decreased from last year just didn't respond. People are much more happy to respond when it's an increase, but that increase ranged from 1% to 17% in those various communities that responded. There was about 17. The average was about 5%. So we're close to average, but again, we did have some outliers earlier in the year. So when we're projecting for next year, we'll take out some of those larger outliers for sure, and then take in recent trends into account. So for this is just to show the half-cent sales tax, and our current balance is about 501,000. This information is included in the other slide as well. This just breaks it out. And then our local versus non-local sales tax. It's a little, 49% this month, so we are increasing. And we do typically see those increases as we get into the summer months and the touristy festival season, so always look forward to seeing our local businesses doing well and contributing more to their sales tax. We do have a couple of delinquencies, late sales tax that I've been monitoring. Two of our local businesses are 2 months behind. One of those is one that had a prior payment agreement with Colorado Department of Revenue that continues to pay the payment agreement, but is now behind on current payments. I did reach out to this business with no response yet, so we will let you know if that continues, and we'll address it at the next meeting. And then one local business that is 1 month behind. That's not a usual business that we see, so. It's just to report on our local businesses. And then this is just a update on the event vendor sales tax. So as you recall, we met with the venues in town and we worked towards a non-fee local business or license so that we are getting the information for their vendors that are providing retail services, mostly caterers, florists, things like that. And requiring them to get a license so that I could get their correct sales tax IDs. As of today, actually, we now have 17, there was 15, so that have submitted and they have gotten their sales tax licenses, and many of them have never submitted sales tax license before and I can see the date that they got their site ID from the Department of Revenue. And it is oddly enough in summer or spring of 2026. So we look forward to seeing what we get from those. And we've already started seeing a couple of them remit for May sales. So I'm really hopeful to continue to see that. And I think we are going to report back on that second meeting in August through June sales. So I'll let you know what I see out of those new businesses. And we can give a total for that. And we are continuing to work with the venues and they are very helpful. I sent them a list of the ones who have complied. And so then some of them I do believe reached out to the businesses who hadn't. And so I did receive and two more. So we will hopefully continue to see that compliance come through. And that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Appreciate your continued work on that. It's an ongoing project for some time that should be big dividends and revenues going forward without new taxes. You know, it's the goal. Any questions about the financial report? Thank you, Director Armstrong. Appreciate it. Now we'll go past orders about the appearance, which we do not have tonight, and I will ask the clerk to read the consent agenda.
Yes, item 1 is resolution 2026-41, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, accepting results of the 2025 financial audit. Item 2 is resolution 2026-42, resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, ratifying the decision of the Board of Trustees on July 6, 2026, to waive certain special event fees for LEAF and LCF for Leaf Nanny 2026. Item 3 is resolution 2026-43, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, designating the 2027 Sundance Film Festival as a special qualifying event for issuance of special event lodging licenses. Item 4 are the July 6, 2026 regular Board of Trustees meeting minutes. Item 5 are the July 13th, 2026 special Board of Trustees meeting minutes. And item 6 are the July accounts.
Well, I hear a motion for approval of the consent agenda. So, is there a second?
Second.
Are there any items that we wish to remove from the consent agenda? I don't call for the vote. I'll be abstaining from this vote because I have a conflict of interest on the committee items, so I will be voting this.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Moving on to general business. The first item is a resolution providing for additional appropriations during fiscal year 2026 for unanticipated revenues and expenditures. And that presentation over to town staff.
Thank you. So what we have before you is a budget amendment for 2026. It's the first budget amendment of the year. We are required by Colorado law to amend the appropriation for any additional increase in expenditures. And we are also updating the 2026 beginning fund balances with what the audited financials show. I'll share my screen because I know that this can be a little complex as well, but hopefully not as much as the audit. So what I'd like to point out is going through, I'm skipping over the very first page because the very first page is essentially a roll up. We can go back to that if needed, but ideally, these are the items that we are approving being added to the budget this evening. So many of these are 2025 rollovers, and what that means is they were in the budget last year, they didn't get finished, so we're rolling the remaining expenditure and the unfinished budget. So those items are essentially a wash for our financials because we've already incorporated those in fund balance purposes. The items that are new to 2026 are things that we have at least discussed before or touched on before with the difference of the stormwater stuff, which I will address. So these are all by fund. And so most of these are capital or grant purposes. I'll say the new items we'll look at, I'm gonna skip over the general fund for a quick minute, is mainly in the stormwater fund. And these are the environmental consultant for the Second and Third Avenue, which the board has previously approved moving forward with. In addition to the most important here is the DOLA grant match for the stormwater culvert repair. That's the energy and mineral grant. They are waiting on us to appropriate that match in order to send us a grant agreement. The reason you see some decreases in the stormwater fund is that in order for us to not essentially dip into reserves when we're appropriating this, we had to move some budget line items out of stormwater to the general fund. So that being the street sweeping, we typically split that budget 50-50. So we're this year proposing just to move the 10,000 to the general fund, let the general fund just cover the whole thing. The other piece is the adjustment to allocated expenses. So we have a department, if you will, in the general fund that has expenditures that benefit all the various funds. So our audit expenditures, our IT expenditures, all our software, our general insurance, all of those benefit all the funds. So essentially the general fund charges different percentages to each of the funds. The general fund covers the most of them, but each fund covers a piece of them, and those are what we call the allocated expenditures. For this year, I'm advocating to decrease those allocated expenditures and let the general fund cover a little bit more. This is in lieu of the general fund essentially just transferring into the enterprise fund, which would then throw us out of enterprise status. This is a workaround around that. And to me, these are very viable things to move to the general fund. One, because the allocated expenditures from the stormwater fund did increase this year, just based on the amount of activity we anticipated happening. We're just gonna ask the general fund to cover those for this year. Now, this is really just a budgetary move because we know that the culvert repair is not gonna happen all in 2026, right? It's going to be a multi-year obligation, but in order for us to be eligible to get that grant, we have to appropriate and show that we have the funds available to do that. So that is probably the biggest thing that needs to be discussed. The other items are just rollovers. And then in the grant fund, you can see the two new grant funds, the two new grants being the energy and mineral grant here and the Boulder County Wildfire Mitigation Grant, which was 40,000, and we are matching 40,000 of that. So that match has already been budgeted. And then the grant fund always has completely offsetting revenue because it is a grant fund. That's just where we're appropriating all of our grants. And so this is the total impact to all of the funds, which rolls back into this confusing piece that I don't ask you to back into if you don't want to. Feel free to if you'd like, but this just breaks it up into this is our original budgeted revenues for the year. Well, now we're gonna add the grant revenues, and we're gonna take out essentially the appropriation or the allocated that the stormwater is gonna give to the general fund. And then we're gonna increase the expenditures in all of these funds by exactly what you see in the details. And that gives you a new projected fund balance. These 2026 beginning fund balances are the ones that are updated from the audit. And it takes into account everything that we've discussed in today. The most important part that I like to see is, okay, what does that mean? How much money do we have left to spend? Here's what that number is. Here's the projected ending fund balance after we have taken these amendments. Here's what our required reserve is, and then here's the amounts remaining to spend. Mayor Browning, I will point out that 743 that we were noticing from the stormwater is actually 715 because that number was before I made the adjustments to the stormwater fund. So I apologize for that error, but the amount is 715. So these are the amounts available to appropriate on additional projects. I will say it's very rare to appropriate remaining fund balance to fund ongoing operations. You shouldn't do it. It's not good practice because it's not guaranteed you're going to have it every year. These amounts should be, unless there's an emergency for some reason, should be used for one-time expenses, capital, grant matches, one-time surveys, projects, consultant studies, things like that. So it's just something important to think about when you think, oh, wow, we have 700,000 left. It's not recommended you use that to fund ongoing operations, because, for example, in our 2026 original budget, we have remaining for operations purposes, when you take out the general fund, when you take out capital projects, the incoming revenue and the operational expenses, what was left was about 175,000. If we assume all of that stays the same, we have upcoming the 2027 budget, which has a very large increase to the sheriff's budget, which we got them to piece out for us and phase in last year. That increase is proposed to be 125,000. What that means is if all of this were to stay the same in 2026 as it does in 2027, no additional revenues, no decrease in revenue, or decrease in revenues, decrease in expense, increase in expense, we would be looking at $50,000 remaining for capital projects if we did not have that fund balance. So it's just something to think about when you're thinking about what else, can we appropriate? Especially if, we're looking at the stormwater budget, and if the general fund needed to pick up some of that, that would take every bit of what we have here, potentially, and allocate it to that. So we just have to be really aware of what's remaining. This is a great amount to have remaining, though. It's not always been this way. It's a result of, the rollovers, not using all the expenditures and having savings and projecting conservatively with the revenues and then coming in at a higher rate. So that's definitely a good thing. But this is what we have remaining. I know that there are additional requests that could be coming even from staff, things that might be needed that could be forthcoming. But yeah, this is where we're at now. It's not awful. It's definitely not.
Only the stormwater.
Well, this one, yeah, you can see this is all doing those adjustments. It left us after meeting our reserves $600. So,
I have a question.
read that.
So how can we be? Basically, we're only those 10% of what we budgeted. Budgeted 33.647 billion. General fund. You're projecting $715,000 balance. Are we doing that right?
yes, that's going to be the projected balance. If we spend the total 4 million in expenditures. So the general fund, if you look up here, I don't know where I'm trying to highlight. The general fund expenditures will be 4.1 million.
Yeah.
And if we spend all of those and also do our restricted 50,000 for our flood, that will leave us with what you saw as this is the fund balance, and then we take out the reserves, and that leaves us with the 700,000.
Use the phrase, but this is bad money, so.
It could be, or it could be money you save for your next big project. Yeah, but it's funds you could use. Like, I do know that, Dave Cosgrove is gonna ask for another electric mower because.
And that will hit the parks budget though, and parks, parks did end up
Oh, they
with
ended
a
up, okay.
good fund balance,
But
so.
for example, like there's this big clearance sale on these electric mowers that we didn't have budgeted. And we're required by the state to move to, so, you know, if we can get an extra one of those now versus wait till they go up in the spring. But it sounds like he's gonna be able to cover it this year. Electronic records. Yes, electronic records is.
We have a big, what was their estimate, was it $140,000 to finish it out?
And so
The electronic
to
records.
finish up the scanning in of all the documents at town, so.
The first part of
we
it
spent
was.
145,000.
This was gonna be double.
So what's interesting, what really came in pricey, all of these old leather bound books that we have that are like minutes from 1879, into almost $1 a page for someone to sit there and take a picture. We regrouped and I'm like, okay, whoever looks through those, we have all of these fireproof cabinets now, so it's like, okay, time out, we need to reduce the scope. We would love to be able to do that, but that's pie in the sky for us, so we need the important documents, so we're like, okay, we're gonna slash that, but. You know, just every year it's more money, but we're looking at just cutting that. I think we're gonna be down to hopefully maybe just doing all the maps. Which should kind of button us up. He's done all of the Brown building completed. All of the records room, ordinances, resolutions, address files, utility address files, all of that was done. So what was left, I sent him one book. And they average 600 to 900 pages a book. They're those big giant, they're beautiful, they're antiques, but nobody ever sees those, and I'm like, oh, man. $1 a page, it's a little too much, so that'll be covered, so we just need to figure out where we're gonna slice and dice and get it ready.
But the maps are great.
Yeah,
It'd be nice.
Yeah, so there
But we
is
need to go
no
through those.
additional, there will be potentially some additional, requests there.
Yeah.
for that
Another good
project.
example is under electric, if we did get a grant and we had to match it with 25%. We do have it there to spend 100,000 toward, you know, an electric underground that we didn't plan for if we got a grant. But yeah, this is probably the best
It's in good shape, it definitely is. There's been years where we've scraped that general fund down to 36,000.
oh yeah, I remember that.
Might have been one of my first years.
I think you're right.
I mean. You have any inkling of where the savings has come from? You talked earlier
Oh,
about
for
it.
sure, yeah.
Definitely, well, we're very conservative with our sales tax, so even though last year we had higher revenues in sales tax and property tax, we're usually pretty much right on. Building revenues, sometimes, I'm trying to think of last year, it seems like forever ago, use tax, I think that one came in a little bit higher last year, yeah, I would have to go back definitely to the budget, but.
You know, off the top of your head, I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
You
it's just-
mentioned personnel, insurance.
Oh, sure,
things like
yeah,
that.
for our expenses, yeah, we typically see personnel savings. One, we don't fill if we have open positions that, you know, they take time to fill. Or if we've budgeted them at a higher level of benefits than the person coming in elected, that's significant savings right there. So a lot of times it is that, we budget for various professional services, because our legal hits various departments and various funds, so things like legal, outside engineering, we've decreased those budgets significantly since I've been here. The professional services for those have
Having
been a
less
lot
than our
higher.
own staff.
Yeah, that has saved us significantly. Sometimes our capital projects might not come in, you know, as high, so that helps when those finish out. I honestly feel like a lot of it is professional services, though. Sometimes supplies or, you know, building and maintenance costs usually come in pretty high as our buildings are aging. You know, whereas we might see that go over budget, but we see our professional services come under, so it kind of makes up for those, but.
One question, this relates to something I'm gonna propose once we have a motion and discussion. Just bring everybody else. I emailed today about what we had budgeted for fire risk mitigation. And the $40,000 to match the county grant was one item. From what, Director Cosgrove responded, we haven't spent all that yet. And there may be some of that left, depending on what the costs come in for the remaining areas he wants to focus on. And then we budgeted $5,000 potentially for the $500 matches on the Boulder Wildfire Partners grants. And last I heard, there were only 3 or 4 of those that had come through so far, so there might be a little bit of extra funds there. So there, based on your response, it looked like there could be maybe $10,000 total unspent from what we've already budgeted.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing, so the numbers that Dave gave you, which I think if I remember correctly was 18,000 plus maybe a 14,000. We're gonna submit half of those to Boulder County and they're gonna reimburse half of those, so we actually have a significant amount left. If you think they cover half and we cover half, that's how that works.
Oh, I thought I read those as our share.
No,
Um,
no, I think that is the total cost, and so we will submit half of those to be reimbursed from Boulder County. And so if we have other projects we wanna do this year, there is plenty of funds there to do that for the town, cause I think it was limited to town properties. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
public property.
yeah, so it has to be, so if we have additional projects, and I think those were the ones maybe he listed down below.
The additional
Um,
projects, yeah.
That we could look at and consider. Otherwise, we could roll that grant, but something he mentioned is we can apply for that every single year. So we should probably
Yeah,
use it.
They were saying
If we could use it all this year and then apply for it again and budget for our match again, that's the way to do it instead of rolling it and waiting to spend the rest of it and then missing a year to apply.
Yeah, it was all about, again, staff capacity to carry those out. We could do it in 2026, or we could carry it into 27. But if we can apply for an additional, then next year we may as well.
Sure, as long as we have.
That's what, yeah,
Yeah.
so Dave has the current list, we have bids out and ready to do, and then he's got a couple in waiting and could do if you guys want to expend.
Trustee Schwartz.
When you're ready, Mayor, I'm happy to make a motion.
Okay.
You wanna use your microphone?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you ready?
Yes, unless there are further questions to staff. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve resolution 2026-44, a resolution of the Town of Lyons providing an additional appropriation during fiscal year 2026 for unanticipated 2026 revenues and expenditures required of the Town of Lyons, Colorado.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. I have one amendment I would like to propose, I'll make the motion, then I'll provide an explanation. I move that we add a $50,000 general fund item, would defer to staff on the proper line item, for fire risk mitigation. I'll explain that in a minute. It's seconded.
I'll second.
We have coming up in August, a discussion on retroactive fire risk mitigation measures. It was originally scheduled in June. We had a meeting with them on agenda. We postponed it, until July, I believe, and then Trustee Williams, who is on this volunteer with the fire department, won't be here till August, so the proposal was to kick that to August. So we'll be taking that up probably at the August 3rd meeting. One of the things that has come up every time there's been a discussion about potential retroactive fire risk mitigation measures is we're going to have to budget for that. We don't have anything budgeted for that. We don't know yet, there's a chicken and egg issue here. We don't know yet if if a majority of the board will even support doing that or not. But even in the discussion of that, I'm pretty sure that the budgetary needs will factor into that. So I don't know which is the card and which is the horse, but I would like to have a budget item. And I've already put in the budget, and I'm gonna suggest $50,000 to go toward retroactive fire risk mitigation measures. If a majority of the board decides not to do that, then we would simply re-amend the budget and remove that item and put the money back in the general fund. But I would like to have a significant amount of money sitting there at the time we do the discussion. And it could go for several things. It could go for a grant match. There are some potential fire mitigation grants that are available from the state as well. It could also go for staffing costs, towards staffing costs, to implement any retroactive fire risk mitigation measures that we should do. It could also go, if we decide to do some type of a program such as juniper removal and out next to houses, which would be one of the measures we will be considering. We would have funds available for that purpose. I just think it's better if this is really a priority, fire risk mitigation, that we have some funds available in the budget. If we ultimately decide not to take those measures, then the money's still there, we haven't spent it. But I would like to basically look ahead to what we're going to discuss and have some available funds when we get to that discussion. And Trustee Lowell and I, who are on a task force with the fire district, have talked with the fire district, potentially, as has town staff, about sharing a position in the future for implementation costs if we did retroactive measures. I believe Town Administrator Simonson has said that Planner Ritchie is going to be in charge of the staff fire risk mitigation issues that she did the memo in the packet back in June. And I would just like to have some funds available for that purpose going forward. Even though we don't have a designated specific item to expend those on there now, I would analogize this to the $100,000 that we've allocated each year for undergrounding of electric lines, but we didn't have a specific project in mind when we did that, or the large amount of money that we set aside for potential clawbacks on the FEMA advances, even though we don't know what those specifically are yet. I just think that fire risk mitigation has been identified again and again and again as a priority, and I think it's time that we put some money where we've all discussed doing, and so that's my suggestion.
We can discuss and debate the details of retroactive measures when the time comes. But if we've learned anything, it's that the public is slow to educate or doesn't take advantage of the opportunities that are there. And we have to put in some financial incentives for them to do mitigation. And I don't mean direct payment to them, rather I mean things like, payment to contractors if necessary, or payment to volunteer groups, and even free lunches like we had in the flood, with the flood volunteers. But clearly, something needs to be done, and I think the set aside $50,000 is probably enough at this point. Maybe in succeeding years it will take more. But we need to have something in the budget that we can work with if we decide to go ahead and put in retroactive measures on the Alliance homeowners.
it. Because I'm new, and how big of a deal is this chicken and the egg issue?
It's actually not, because we can make budget appropriations as many times as we want throughout the year. There's no set times. You can see we've already made a few before we actually brought the formal action before the board. So if the board wishes to, I mean, this is just for this budget amendment, if the board wishes and thinks they need a separate discussion or something, you know, we can make this appropriation whenever we want.
What we normally do for operating is, as you know, we try to absorb what we can with what's already budgeted. And then if we don't have enough, we come to you for a budget amendment. If we can't, you know, but if you want a specific true set aside, you know, you can do that too. So you can do it either way, but it is not, to us, we just try to absorb it under the current budget before you make an amendment and then don't. Either.
I guess from my thinking at this point in time, I'm not sure I'm in favor of appropriating something that we haven't fully discussed yet. And I think though the words, the retroactive part is probably the most concerning and I really appreciate what we're trying to do, and I think there's agreement on the board around support. I would probably feel more comfortable if we talked about community-wide fire mitigation strategies versus retroactive policy on homeowners, without further discussion.
Further discussion, then we'll all do the vote. I'm sorry, you want to discuss?
What are we voting on?
The motion is to add $50,000 line item for potential fire risk mitigation measures. Without specifying particular projects. So it's basically the term, a set aside that shows our. It is a priority for us to set aside funds in the budget. That if we decide not to do retroactive measures, or we thought with no programs to spend it, not to do any kind of additional staff in that area, we simply put it back into the general fund. So it's basically highlighting the priority and setting it aside. But again, I would analogize it to, we appropriate $100,000 every year for undergrounding or electric lines, but we don't always spend it because we don't have specific projects. It's just there, if a project comes along and we're able to use it.
Okay, so my comment, I mean, besides the amazing budget work, I have my own giant budget in my career, and I had wildfire prevention as a line item on my budget for years, and we didn't get to roll anything over, use it or lose it, different in that kind of world. I am not opposed to having some line item. I think the big discussion is more going to be what, when, how, and why, and then the language matters. Retroactive to me was like, what? But then when I start looking at what we're actually thinking about doing, there's nothing really retroactive. It's proactive wildfire mitigation, also based on the new rules that we're all gonna have to deal with in Colorado. I don't think 50,000 is gonna be enough, but that's a good start.
To be clear, the retroactive aspect of it is up for further discussion in August. We haven't decided that, and it's not being proposed tonight.
So just to clarify, if we don't do this and then we have a discussion and we decide what we're gonna do, we can appropriate this after we know what we're gonna do.
Correct. This money isn't going anywhere unless you all appropriate it.
Right.
Exactly. And typically with wildfire mitigation, we've split it 50-50 between parks and general fund. So I think depending on what it is that we would want to do, you know, we would look at that direction as well.
I'm fine with putting it on the line item. I feel like it pushes us to have the conversation sooner rather than later. Then we can hash out. It needs to be more or less, but it kind of just pushes the conversation forward, I think.
We're gonna have that conversation sooner, probably the next week. Okay, I will call for the vote.
And the motion passes 5-1 with trustee Schwartz voting no.
So we did do Brandon as amended.
As amended? Can we do
Yeah,
that?
you vote on
Okay.
as amended now. The amendment passed and you vote on as amended.
Are there any further amendments from that first resolution 2026-44? If not, then I will call for a vote on the full resolution.
And that resolution also passes 5-1 with trustee Schwartz voting no.
Next item under general business is discussion direction based on the workshop discussion of stormwater funding sources and processes. For those who may be watching who weren't involved in the workshop, I'd ask that staff give a kind of quick summary of what we discussed there.
Sure.
Or-
We just, did you want to share my chart again or, okay.
We need a first and second as amended.
No, the motion passed it and then, the resolution was to pass. The original motion was to pass, then
But do those people need to say that's okay as amended?
well, the amendment
For the
passed.
amendment, so they're good, yeah.
Okay,
We did.
I was just thinking of that for the original, if I needed to, because one of the people voting was against.
Right.
That made the
I just
issue.
didn't like.
No,
Not
but
that I didn't like the spirit of what we're doing, I'm just.
no, mine was just that
The language that we're.
the original motion was,
The resolution, I did an amendment, we voted on the amendment, and I think we voted on the resolution as
Again.
well, yes.
okay, but okay. All right, I didn't know if we needed another first and second since the person making
Nope.
the motion.
They can always vote no on it. You can vote no on a motion you make, right?
That's true. That's true. Sure. Sorry, just got caught in my head there.
Okay.
Circular.
All good, yep.
So earlier in the workshop, we presented the funding possibilities for the Second and Third Avenue Stormwater Construction Project. We had a couple of scenarios, the first being obviously the one that we all would love to have happen would be to get the BRIC grant and then also get the associated grant match. So in here, you can see what we've applied for to date, and then the grant matches that we would potentially have. And then in addition to that, if we did not get the grant, we're looking at the state revolving loan fund. And if we would want to go for the full amount of the project or backfill part of that to get a smaller loan amount, called it the direct loan. I will say that I have run a couple of loan repayment schedule what ifs. If we go for the 3.8 or more, our annual loan payments might be more than what we're bringing in the 0.5 cent sales tax. So what that would mean is depending on what the state revolving fund terms of the loan are, is we may need to supplement that with stormwater fee revenue. That's the full 3.8 or more. And depending on interest rate and depending on market conditions, and that's a 20-year loan. So these are the types of things, you know, that we want to think about. Now, if we wanted to do the direct loan and only fund 3 million, get a lower interest rate, but then use town funds to backfill, we should be able to cover the loan with sales tax revenue as long as sales tax revenue remains high. But it's just something to be aware of and think about. But I think we need to, like we discussed before, plan for worst case scenario, which would be not getting the grant. And then just deciding if we have the desire to put town funds to fund 800,000 or more. And that's important when we're building the 2027 budget, that I know that that's what the wish of the board is, because then we cannot project to spend much of that fund balance that we discussed. So I think the direction that staff is looking for is how do we want to proceed when building the 2027 budget? If we're gonna proceed with funding the full amount via leverage loan, then it doesn't impact the 2027 budget. With respect to, the general fund. Now, if the board would like to look at only funding or only going out for debt for 3 million, then that will impact the general fund. And including the amount that we just appropriated, which is, so now it's less. But we kind of need that direction on what is the appetite of the board to go for the full amount of the potential project, assuming we get no grants. Because I think that's the worst case scenario, is assuming we get no grants, we have no outside revenue, and we're just gonna fund the whole thing and use capital sales tax. But it is very likely, unless we see a big jump in our capital sales tax, which we would if we got a hotel, and, you know, but we may not in the recent current year, 5-year, 3-year outlook. We might have to increase stormwater fees or transfer additional general fund dollars to support the debt service. So, yeah.
How much is the shortfall between, if we take the $3.8 million loan? If you have it handy.
I do it, and this is very hypothetical because it's going to, so it assumes we're gonna go out for 3.8. Oh, why is this not showing? It's not coming up on my screen. I'm sorry, I do have it handy, but it assumes 3.8 and a 3.6% interest rate and 20 years. The annual payment would be approximately $268,000, and right now we're estimating we're gonna get let's see. I don't have that in here. I think it's about 200. Oh, here it is. 259,000. So we would have a small shortfall, assuming market conditions stay exactly the same, that sales tax stays exactly the same. It's going to be a small shortfall if that's the case. But if anything fluctuates, the cost of the project, the market conditions, sales tax decreases, that's why the authority is going to want the dual pledge. That's why they're going to want us to pledge. Yes, we're pledging the sales tax, but we're also pledging stormwater user fees is what it is. So that we have the ability to control the revenue that we're receiving in.
Stormwater user fees annually amount to what?
120,000. Yeah, 120,000.
Did we up that?
Inflationary increase.
Yeah, we just did a little.
Not raised the monthly rate since it was.
Yeah, so it might go up to 122,000 with that potentially, so. So, and I think it's a matter of, the question on the table is, what is the appetite to fund the whole thing through debt service? Or what is the appetite to only fund 3 million through debt service and hold back general fund dollars to supplement any difference?
I'm leaning towards the 3 million loan and reserving that reserve. Just, that seems the most. I don't know, I guess you could argue both sides of which is more fiscally conservative, but.
Yeah. I'm also inclined to go with the 3 million, but with a big proviso, which is when we get to the 60% design and have cost elements for the various things. I would want to look very closely at whether we could reduce the scope of something, sidewalks being issues that there are always differing opinions about. My view of Second and Third Avenue, particularly Third Avenue, is going to have usable sidewalks to some extent anyway because of the St. Augustine School project that's going on right now. I hear from a lot of people about Second Avenue, and their biggest concern is the street. Yeah, there's some that want sidewalks, there's some that don't want sidewalks. But if we get to the point that when we get to 60% design and cost estimates, and that money is just not enough we do have the option of cutting back the scope of the project, make it fit within our revenues, and to me, that's being fiscally conservative.
However, there's a federal law, if we accept brick money, you have to make ADA accessible sidewalks if you're taking the money.
Okay.
Yes, but we're not talking about the brick scenario here.
I'm talking about.
Well,
We're talking about the false position.
if it's fall,
If we get the brick money, that's a totally different picture.
and then it comes back to again, is it the right thing?
Understood.
For budgetary purposes, for 2027, I go with the 3.8. Why not? I mean, if things change, we can always change the dollar figure, but, I don't wanna get into a situation where we start to script on an important project, so I go for the 3.8.
And then just keep in mind, if we go for the 3.8 and something changes and we've allocated the general fund dollars towards something else, we don't have them anymore, right, to, if we needed to go down to the 3 million. So that, yep, that is one of the gives and takes.
So you guys have done such a great job of budgeting and being very conservative in all your projections, and that's how we've had such good numbers. What is the most conservative from your opinion, Coach? Would it be better in terms of projecting and having cushions and being as wise as we have apparently done over the past few years?
This is a pretty low borrowing cost as an interest rate perspective. And then you have to look at the time value of money. When you think of the 800,000 that you're either saving or spending, what is the value of that to a project today? That if we wait, if we spend the 800,000 on, a different project, or spend or roll it into the loan, you get the value of today's money if you go for the 3.8, and then you get the value, then you have this 800,000 to use towards another important project, whatever it is, high priority project, that if you waited on that one, because you don't have the 800,000 and you waited a couple of years, well, now that project is 1.5 million, so you have to think of it in both ways, but these are low borrowing costs. The interest rate is low, because we have the ability to take advantage of the state's AAA bond rating, and we get 85% of that rate, we get that subsidy, so it is very low borrowing costs, assuming the whole entire project is a very high priority, like Mayor Browning said, if we wanted to pare it down to get, closer to that number, we could. If you wanted to use this $800,000 towards another high priority project, you're stretching the town's dollars a little bit further for fairly low borrowing costs. Again, over 20 years, it's $400,000 that it costs the town. So I think you have to look at it in both ways, and that's the tricky part.
So you're saying if we went for the 3.8, but we didn't have to use all of our set asides for that, we'd basically be borrowing for potential future important capital projects that we may not know what it is, but there's always
There's always.
there's a list in the budget about a mile long of things we need to do.
And so it depends on how high priorities those are,
Yeah,
Because we won't have any other.
because we wouldn't have any, we really
We
won't
can't do
have,
20
This-
years, there's no
this-
capital.
because the sheriff's budget's increasing so much, and it's gonna increase again in
No other
2028. This is our cushion
we
here.
basically maxing
Until
out
next-
our loan amount now,
At
as
a very
opposed to
low
going with a smaller finance mechanism later.
Potentially, yeah. So it is tricky because you have to look
Yeah.
at it both ways. Now, will we have rollover or unused funds again next year? Of course, most likely we will. Is it guaranteed every year? Again, no, that's why you don't want to use it for ongoing operating. That's why you use it for capital one-time purposes. And that's what this money is here. So if we have another high priority capital project or grant match or what have you, that would be a reason to finance the whole 3.8.
So how does the wastewater treatment plant expenses that we have coming up factor into all of this?
If we need to, it'd be the same type of thing. If we're gonna transfer general, we can use general fund dollars to it. It's gonna kick it out of enterprise status, but if we don't foresee any need for future, in the near future, additional wastewater debt after the fact, it absolutely could help subsidize it. It's, again, it's not. I don't know that the town has done that in the past, used general fund dollars for utilities, but
I've worked in other communities.
you know, it just, this state revolving loan fund is also available for
Yeah,
wastewater.
it could. you
So
can
we
apply
can
for
have
that
these
on your
same,
own.
yeah, as long as there's dollars, we could have these same low borrowing costs.
We have one. We have
Yeah,
one
that's
now.
our current.
We have one now.
So we're looking at five and a half million for the sewage treatment plant.
Yeah.
Hopefully get you 1.7, and then we got about 2.2 to throw at it from the,
You've got lots of candles.
the fund,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
So then we're talking about $2 million that we're gonna have to borrow or find a
Or,
bond.
or rates or whatever. Grants, rates, or increase, another loan, which you already have one that's you're pledging your current rates with. Yeah, no, it's all very tricky. That, you know, I agree with you. I think the 3.8 is the most conservative way to go with this. If we don't need it all, okay, if we get more information, so be it. What concerns me more is that whole capital set aside of sales tax revenue every year for the next 20 years. There's no other projects.
Yeah, it will use that, but when we get a hotel, if we get a hotel, or,
When we
so
get.
that's the whole other scenario I'm building. This is
If
what
we
it's
can
going to look
increase
like.
sales
Our
tax.
sales tax in the capital fund would also increase.
Or a development out east that adds additional property tax or, you know, but when we have TIF agreements, then that, you know, they get forgiven for 15 or 20 years and we won't see that for 20. So I mean, it's a long-term commitment, 20 years of not doing other capital projects unless we can afford them in other ways.
yeah, I'm gonna change my position. I think we'll go for the 3.82. If we don't use it all, I am 100% confident that there will be another high priority capital project coming along that it would be available for, and so it makes sense to me to borrow it all at once now instead of having to figure out how to finance another project down the road, because I'm sure one's gonna be coming.
Yeah.
Other comments?
I'll just say I appreciate this discussion and I also can support the 3.8.
They're shaking their heads.
So I spent most of my career, 30 years of doing big capital projects, and I would say your discussion, hopefully other people in lines listen to it, because that is really the way to think about it. And also, this wastewater treatment plant, I came in late to the design, and I've lived here a long time, but we already looked at a lot of that stuff they were talking about, you know, putting into the scope, and we've already weaned it back. Because we learned more as we went through design, and we will keep learning.
Yeah.
And we will have more projects, so I go for 3.8.
They were going for the 3.8.
Thank you. That will help me build the budget.
The other item in our general business is discussion direction on wildfire mitigation strategies. And this was postponed from a prior meeting to today, to today's agenda. But I believe it would be appropriate, for Trustee Williams, given his connections to the Lions Fire Protection District, to be present for the discussion. So I would propose to further continue that item, and we would so move to continue that item to the August 3rd, or the 26th meeting. Accepting for that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Call for the vote.
And that motion passes unanimously.
That brings us to trustee reports and future agenda items. Trustee McCurry, what's wrong with you?
None of the commissions that I'm liaison to have met in July.
happy vacation, everyone. Excited to get back into it in August. We want to vote. There's a scenario that came up recently that I hope we can discuss at some point about, now that we are an official bee city and we're working to expand pollinator habitat throughout the town. I find it kind of funny that the person leading the charge got recently cited for weeds in his yard, which is a whole pollinator garden extravaganza going on over there. So I would love to see, I know we're following up with them, but I just thought it promotes a bigger discussion on how, when we adopt certain things, how we share that information with the people that it affects. So, following up with what it means to have a wildflower garden in your yard, and how we could share that info with like code compliance officers and things of that nature. I imagine other things will come up as we move forward with wildfire measures.
Representative Winger, you've been busy attending meetings, would you like to report?
So I really haven't, because Sundance hasn't met, the meeting in August and then in September. And then you went to UEB for me. And while he was at UEB, I took my car to a bus in Denver. Highly recommend it, with our Eco Pass that we all get. And attended my first in-person Dr. Cog meeting. I've been to some of the work sessions online. It was fantastic, well represented. Totally understand why they want to meet in person. They get so much done. They have a lot of grant money available to us, so I'll be reporting out more and probably spamming everybody to whatever way you want to see that done. Say, hey, there's a lot there to learn. And they have a great website with much data on there. It's not always easy to find, but you can reach back to me if you want to find something in particular.
While Mayor Pro Tem Weird was at how was it for UEB? They are carefully monitoring the progress toward time of use rates. The police board service report, I want to make it clear for members of the public too that might be listening to this, that the anticipated sequence of events is that billing, maybe in August, maybe in September, we try for August, will be done at the existing set of rates, but it will show what people's bills would have been under time of use rates. So it'll kind of be a advanced warning of what advance notice of what may be to come. That will be accompanied with a lot of other publicity and education efforts. I believe that the billing software and meter reading software is close to being done at this point, from what I understand, which has been
We're working
a
on.
lot of it's been worked on. Worked on. But this has to come in phases, but it's basically gonna be phased in. Perhaps in the fall, if things are not all in place by the fall, then the spring will be in the shoulder season rather than in times. UED is also at each meeting now focusing in on progress on the wastewater treatment facility design. I don't want to create false hopes here, but there was some potential good news. I'll put it that way. It's not certain at the last UED meeting that the company has done some that would be involved in installing a screw press to replace the existing centrifuge. He's looking at the possibility of maybe being able to fit that into the existing space at the plant instead of having to enlarge the physical plant, which costs a lot of extra money, which creates big delays in construction time. It's not certain that can be done. It had been assumed all along, I believe, that you have to expand the plant in order to do that. Explain the physical plant, but could be a possibility for good things there. I don't promise anything, but I'll throw that out there. And the UED and Director Kaplan are staying on top of that and moving forward.
Parks and Rec Commission met on July 13th, and most of the discussion centered around what they're going to present to us on the 17th. Chief among them will be their recommendations on codifying the special event fees, waivers, making changes to the existing policy. So we had a pretty good discussion on that. Administrator Simonson was there, she came up with a couple of good ideas on it. So you will be talking to us on the 17th of August, that's what you have probably scheduled for. And that was it, calls you will be tomorrow.
All right, the PCDC has not met yet in July, but we'll meet next Monday. And, I know, Mayor, you said you're working on a herbicide workshop coming up in August, so thank you for that. Looking forward to that. That's all I got.
All right, HHSC did not meet either. Happy summer. Regional Working Group on Homelessness and that, they didn't have a lot that was relevant to us, although there was a touch on a discussion about Section 8 vouchers for ADUs as the possibility from the county. So that's something I'm gonna follow up with Commissioner Logan on, just because it's good to know what the potentials are. I also attended the PRC meeting and I got a couple other things out of it different than what Trustee Bubble got. First is there was a good bit of discussion about the leased properties on the Dr. Bob or on the confluence and the definition of what an event is. There's some understanding of how many events there will be per year. And some of the folks in that community are saying they're counting things as events that I don't think were necessarily intended to be counted as events. So they're gonna bring that up to us as something that we need to help them define. What is an event and what meets that threshold? Is it people going to fix a shed? Or is it a organized community event that people are invited to? There's a little bit of controversy there. The other thing that came up, several people mentioned some confusion about this whole waiver of parks fees. Not so much the project, but the guidance. They had understood that they were waiting for guidance from the Board of Trustees before they moved forward. And then apparently they got direction from the mayor directly to move forward with that. And so there was some confusion and a little bit of frustration about not really knowing what direction they were supposed to go in because the board hadn't discussed it and given that direction. And so they asked that we bring that up and then we as a board put that on an agenda and talk about it. What does it actually look like? Who directs what? Just so everyone's on the same page and people aren't feeling caught off guard or confused. And that's it.
I believe the intention of the future agenda is to have the Parks and Recreation Commission present their ideas on that during the board have a one discussion. And in some respects, that was sort of a carryover from the last board because we had a discussion without specific direction about doing setting these event by event, which led to me requesting the Parks Commission to take a look at it and the EDC, which is not really weighed in very much yet. But I think that there will be a more discussion based essentially on kind of an agenda that the Parks Commission is going to put in front of us as a recommendation, and I guess is a proper way to put it. Hey, summary of action items.
I think it's a short one tonight. I've got, from the workshop, staff is to research which board approved the Safe Streets for All grant for the 36, to the junction 36-7 project funding, sources for the sidewalks, and that is to be on the 8-4 agenda. Number 2, Mayor Pro Tem to be back up for CML Executive Policy Group. Item 3, board direction was to apply for both grants and the new wildfire grant that was presented. Next, I have resolution 2026-44 passed your general business. Next, I have board consensus was to pursue the $3.8 million loan for the 2nd and 3rd Avenue project. That's all I have.
My only other item was to report back to CML that Mayor Pro Tem will be your alternate. I need to do that. And then, follow up on the pollinator.
I don't have anything additional.
Yes, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Exactly.
Second.
All in favor?
That motion passes unanimously.
8:39.
We were faster when we were in the heat, 14.
Record time. Good night, everyone.
Thanks.